Okay, we'll call the meeting to order at 10:02. Can you guys all hear us? Thumbs up, Landon? Okay, perfect. Thank you guys for being on. Thank you guys that are here for being here. We'll call the meeting to order. Welcome to everyone. For those of you that brave the roads, Tina and George, thank you. Appreciate that. Looks like we are only missing Bree, Judge Nicely, and Rachel.
Judge just hopped on.
Okay, and is that Hannah for the judge?
No, that's Hannah from here.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, so the judge is on as well. Thank you, Judge, for being there. And we'll see if Bree and Rachel show up. So
Hi.
First action item is...
I'm
Yes, sir,
David Talley. I'm Judge Nicely's law clerk. So it says Judge Nicely, but I'm David Talley. We're currently in the middle of a jury trial. So Judge Nicely is on the bench. So she's asked me to sit in her place. So thank you. Glad to be here.
David, thank you. Yes, thank you for being here. And it looks like we have Rachel now too.
And I'm reading them.
And still no Bree, right? Okay. First action item is approval of the minutes. Has everyone had a chance to read the minutes? Oh, did you say Lila's on? I don't see Lila, but she is on. Okay.
May we do a roll call?
Yes,
Thank you, just to confirm.
you bet. So quick roll call. Randy Shipman is here. Mike. Bree. Christy.
Yes, here.
George. I'm here. Judge Nicely. David sitting in for Judge. Okay. Landon.
Here.
Lila.
I'm here.
And Megan.
Here.
Rachel.
Here.
And Tina.
Here.
Perfect. Okay. Okay, approval of the minutes. Has everyone had a chance to take a look at the minutes?
No, I don't see that I'm listed in the minutes.
You're
From September?
at the top.
Well, I know I'm up at the top, but the round table, I don't show.
Oh, I see.
Me too. I was weird.
Yeah, let's go back and listen. You were late, I think?
Oh, probably.
I think George was late and he missed some of it. He did say a couple things, but
Oh
Tina
my God, yes.
was here.
I can read on Tina. Okay.
Thank you for seeing that or catching that, Tina. Yeah, because you're here on the members present. Any other questions about the minutes? Okay, so how do we want to do this? Can we accept them based on amending them, or do we need to wait till they're amended?
You can.
We can, okay. If someone would care to make a motion, making sure that Tina's comments get in the roundtable, then we will accept that motion.
Motion to approve the minutes with the amendment as described.
Okay, it's been moved by Mike. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Christy is second. Is there any further discussion? Okay, seeing none with that amendment, all signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign. Motion passes unanimously. And Kim, thanks for doing that. That's a lot of stuff. Yeah, catch. So thank you. Roundtable updates. George, why don't we start with you?
Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. So I guess back in October, we got to go to Minneapolis for the Justice Conference, and it was pretty neat. I guess it was dynamic in that I was seeing how other states do things. You know, it seemed like here in Montana, as soon as they turn 18, they get pushed out the door, and these other states are considering folks as juveniles even after 17, you know. So once they're like, there was one kid, they did a video on him, and he was like 20 and still within one of those like group homes, kind of like an alternative custody agreement where he was released to a group home. And lack of a better, I don't know what the name of what that kind of entity would be, but kind of still acknowledging that they're younger people that need help, and just didn't want to throw them, like in Montana's case, I guess we probably ship them into MSP as soon as they turn 18. I don't know how it works from going from Miles City after they turn 18, but I think that was kind of a neat thing to see. I guess each state does things different. And, I think Montana, it seems like we could probably do a little more. And that's kind of what I felt after coming back from that conference. So, just on the county side, it's winter now. So, my usual things, roads, taxes all were due in November. So some people saw nice decreases. Some people saw big increases, depending whether you had a first or second home. And now we have the next steps. We'll start getting ready for next year. I already started talking to my road department about what products we're going to do. One thing I got to do this past month, and it's made we got to go to Rapid City, and so the sheriff office down there does something unique. They run it's called a safe bed, and they run a detox, and then they run a residential treatment out of the sheriff office, and it's kind of something I think we need at our county seat in Hardin. We got to go over there and visit them. Primary population that they're serving Rapid City is Native Americans. Many of our street persons, homeless persons, houseless persons are Native Americans. So, our jail's overbooked, we're full. We have beds in Gallatin, we have beds in Flathead County. So we're shipping people all over. And then we have our regular guys who, that they need a place to stay that night. And so that's kind of something we're looking at, jail diversion, where if we can provide them a safe spot to, spend the cold hours of the night, and then, they're like between 6 and 8. The latest they can stay is 8 o'clock. So we're looking at a model like that. We talked with our health partner in the county, One Health. It kind of does probably about half of the state's federal medical clinic stuff, and they're willing to partner with us. They have an entity in town that already does kind of outreach drop-in center for our street persons. And so partner with them to how we can create this model here in Bighorn County. So kind of two neat things in the last 2 months. So I guess that's my update. Thank you all.
Thank you, George. How many beds do you have?
34.
34.
Yeah.
And that's all adult?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had a juvenile spot side. And then when the laws changed, that just became like a dispatch center. But we need an addition too. It's an old jail.
Okay, thank you, George. Appreciate your work and insights and all that good stuff. Tina, do you want to go next, and then we'll go online?
Sure. So we met with the Education Interim Committee because we at the Montana Safe School Center are in charge of the school safety study, and that's HJ 53. So we have been collecting data. Hopefully anybody who's affiliated with a school got the survey, and hopefully people are filling those out. We are finding some really interesting information. I don't know if you guys are aware, we only have 50 SROs in the state, and most of our schools don't have a full-time SRO even for Billings. So trying to figure out law enforcement and getting law enforcement buy-in, because law enforcement is really important for threat assessments to help stop that pathway to violence. And the Education Interim Committee also met with the Board of Public Education. They were also very surprised that we were doing the school safety survey, but it is providing us with a lot of information. A lot of schools do not understand what threat assessment even is, even though it's a law. So they're not using a policy, they're not using tools. So that has been really interesting. We did submit for the BJA Stop Violence grant for our center. We're also looking at partnering with a researcher on doing a pilot for threat assessment in rural schools. Because when we have 1 to 2 room schoolhouses, having a lead teacher and a para, how do you do an entire threat assessment with a team if you've only got 2 people? So trying to think about how we can create a model to help rural schools when they have to do a threat assessment. And then we've just been, we did a road show all over the state. We had 6 different locations, and we are fully booked for January for trainings and threat assessment coaching. So we are super busy at the Montana Safe School Center. So.
Thanks, Tina. We're not doing introductions, so why don't you also just each person give us a quick little, might be good for Kayla, it might be good for new members, just kind of what, because I think being a trustee is a big deal that a lot of people may not be aware of and how that ties in with your other work. But just George is, of course, a county commissioner in Bighorn County, right, George?
Yes.
And then just give us a quick, like who you are.
Tina Hayes, and I work, I'm the associate director at the Montana Safe School Center. My primary job is to work with emergency operations plan, threat assessment coaching, and doing all the trainings that we provide, which is over 25 different trainings for schools, and it's all for free. I also do site assessments. My other hat I wear is I am a school board trustee for the Missoula County Public Schools. So that gives me a completely different view of how things work. So that's it.
Perfect. Thank you, Tina. Mike, do you want to go next?
Sure, happy to. It's good to see everybody. Sorry I'm not there in person. As always, there's a lot going on. It's a good thing. The state has created a project team to do some system improvements in youth care. The overall goal of that is to reduce the number of kids being sent out of state for care. Kind of the sub goals to get there. They're beginning to, they're trying to create a plan to create some acuity rates so that those youth that have highly specialized needs could be served in state. They'll start with PRTF and then roll those out to therapeutic group homes. So they're trying to set some standards and some guidelines, and then how those, what those acuity rates would be based upon the type of youth. The type of youth that they are focusing on, one is younger kids under the age of 10. We don't have enough services in the state of Montana, so those younger kids actually are that have need for services are oftentimes getting sent out of state. Kids with histories of sexual behavior problems, kids with high aggressive behaviors, and then those kids with kind of multiple placements, long histories in the system. So that those will be what they're working on for those acuity rates. Another part of that would be to build a system in Montana that had 4-bed group homes, so smaller group homes for special needs, those same groups of kids, higher acuity youth. So working on trying to create some standards around that. And then lastly, to expand and incentivize home support services. So can kind of intervene earlier so kids can stay at home if possible and don't need to move into those other levels of care. So there's provider members from across the state working on that team, and then the Children's Mental Health Bureau staff, and some involvement with child and family services. So that's kind of exciting. Got a lot of stuff going on there. It'll take some time. I won't expect all of those things to be built out for probably a year. They'll have to, once they get the rules written and the rates established, they have to get them approved by CMS, and then they have to go through a public hearing, public comment period. So I'd say July of 2027 would be my best guess. Anybody's in Helena on this Tuesday, the 16th, the Section B subcommittee. The agenda hasn't come out, but working with the chair there to put some things on that agenda. I believe two of those things will be, one will be on shelter care for youth in Montana and how those kids are, what that actually is, to create some understanding and some of the challenges. Barb Cowan, who is retired, she worked for Watson's Children's Shelter in Missoula, and then prior to that, Partnership for Children, is going to be doing a presentation on that shelter care system, what it was designed to be, what it's kind of used for now, and what it should be used for, and how to get that back in line. And then I think the other challenging population that we're seeing rise up around the state are post-adoption kids that were adopted as normally infants, young children. And then as they hit puberty or some early trauma stuff starts coming back up, and the parents aren't equipped to deal with that. Some of those parents waived Medicaid coverage during the period of time that they could have gotten it for those kids. So private insurance doesn't cover all the services. So trying to figure out how to support those kids and families and keep them together more effectively. So I think that's going to be on that committee agenda, to get some testimony from folks that have been directly impacted by that and see if they can begin to move the system that direction. Section B is budget, so it's the money behind all of that. For YBGR, we're still serving around 2,500 kids a day across the state. That number is not decreasing at all. It's continuing to grow. We're doing about 80 new assessments and community services a month. In the PRTF, we've been averaging around 85 kids. It's down a little bit, not because of referrals, but because of staffing again. We've gone up and down. We got a little better, and then it hit a little dry spell here. So we'd like to get back up into that 90 range first quarter of this next year. In the group homes, we've got the average census of the group homes up to 45 kids across the state. In YBGR group homes, that's up by 10 from last year. So that's good news. We'll hope to keep it there. In the first quarter of 2026, our plan is to, staffing allowing, we would open up an additional group home in Billings, which will add another 10 beds. And we're also breaking ground for an additional group home in Boulder, which would add another 10 beds to that. So hopefully, middle of next year sometime, or by the end of next year, we could be in the 65, 70 beds in group homes. Smaller project, kind of exciting though. We got a grant recently from Intermountain Health, kind of like the post-adoption kids. Those kids are in the gap of, they don't qualify for Medicaid, but private insurance doesn't pay for the services. Intermountain Health has given us a grant to work with kids with substance use needs in Yellowstone County that fall into that gap. So I'm going to start that here at the beginning of this next year as well, to expand those services here. So kind of what we got going on right now.
Perfect. Thank you, Mike. Sounds like a lot. Okay, Christy, would you like to tell us what's going on in your world?
You bet. Hey, everybody, Christy Hendricks. I oversee the foster care ETV program for the state of Montana, and I am at Reach Higher Montana. So we just got done doing all of our foster care packages for all the kiddos that receive ETV funding, and we ended up with 38. We're down 2 from last year, but we're still pretty consistent. Last year we sent out 40 care packages, and these are donations from the Red Scarf Project across the state of Montana, from the knitting clubs that go and do those scarves for the kids, and then we have funding to go and get them. We did a lot of snacks and food this year because it was during the government shutdown, and so they didn't have their SNAP and their TANF funding. So we made sure that we added quite a bit of food in there, as well as Christmas cards, gift cards, clothing items, and laundry kits, and a lot of emergency so they could stay healthy during this season. And that now we are working with the Margaret Stewart Group Home and are purchasing items for those kiddos to make sure that they have stuff that they need for the Christmas season. And I don't know if everybody knows, but this is the last year Margaret Stewart is going to be closing in January. So we will have to figure out where those kiddos are going to be going. And Mike, maybe you have any idea on that. I don't know. So it is with Youth Homes out of Missoula. So I'm assuming we'll hear soon what the progress is for those kids. And then something that might be of interest here, I was at a meeting with Tanya and Rhonda from DPHHS, and there was a gal from WIOA on there, and she was talking about resources that WIOA has for youth that have been adjudicated, and they have funding for kids that if they need supplies for doing interview skills, or even if they want to just take a couple of college classes to see if that is a good fit for them, they have funding for that. Because a lot of the funding, if a student has been through the juvenile justice system, a lot of the funding and grants won't apply to them. And so WIOA is a huge resource for all of those kiddos. So I didn't know if everybody knew that. So just wanted to put that plug in there. She said a lot of the job services will know who to contact in that region because they're regional based. And then the last thing is Marissa and I are starting to work on the COP conference. It'll be in Great Falls in the spring, and I will let her talk more about that. But that's about it in our end.
Okay, thank you, Christy. Megan, do you want to go next and just again remind everyone who you are and what you do?
Sure, happy to. Hi, everyone. I'm Megan Rides at the Door. I serve as the director for the National Native Children's Trauma Center here at the University of Montana. We are a training and technical assistance center, providing a lot of training around trauma-informed care and an entirely grant-funded program. So our work really kind of evolves and revolves around whatever we have going at the moment. We are funded through the end of September. So if people want to request training from us, we can definitely try and respond as best as we can. I'd say since our last meeting, I was just trying to look and see what we've been up to. Most of our work has been outside of the state of Montana in other places, but we have been presenting at different conferences, the Montana Crime Prevention Conference, the Montana Border Crime Control. We also presented at AWARE's Clinical Leadership Conference back in October. And then and next week we'll be doing a 2-day training for Blackfeet Tribal Health. But again, a lot of our work is outside of Montana at the moment. I will put in the chat, we did solidify our webinar series that we're doing in partnership with the Montana Healthcare Foundation and the Montana Professional Learning Collaborative. Free OPI credits are available for those webinars if people are interested in that training opportunity and wanting to get some credits. It'll be a free training series that'll be open for anybody. I think that's all I can think about for roundtable updates right now. Thanks.
Yes, thank you, Megan. I saw Judge Nicely. David, is she available right now? We'll jump to her if she is. David, are you there?
Hi,
Is-
yeah, she was briefly able to get me the notes for her update. So yeah, she's just running back and forth and has to get back on the bench. But I have some updates that I can provide.
Well, let's go ahead and I'm going to skip to Landon and we'll come back to you, David. And if she
Okay.
does come in, kind of show us. And if not, then we'll definitely get your input. But let's go up to
Great.
Landon first and see if she's able to pop back in a minute. Landon, you want to tell us what's going on in your world?
Sure. Yeah. So my name's Landon. I'm a therapist at Pine Hills. Kind of echoing what George said. I went to the conference back in October. And so we've just been trying to kind of update a lot of our programming here and at Pine Hills, adding new things, looking at what else is out there, and also still trying to get more native programming. I wouldn't call it programming, but things like the Sweat Lodge and smudging, we're trying to get more of that going on. And then I've kind of just been reaching out to a lot of the vendors we met at the conference and seeing how we can update some of our programming and what other services might be available.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. David, I see Judge Nicely there. Is she ready to go? And we certainly will listen to you, David, but if she wants to, she can go right now.
I need my own notes.
Yeah, here's your notes.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We are on a break in this jury trial I'm in, so thank you all for cutting me in here. I was trying to give David all my scoop. It's a civil jury trial. It's my final civil jury trial because I'll be moving to a sole youth and criminal docket in January. So in Billings, we have the shelter care at Ted Lechner at 6 kids, 12 in detention. These are all Yellowstone County kids. In speaking with Director Bofto, we kind of feel like the craziness that we had going on the last couple of years has kind of settled down. Or that because they raised their rates, I guess no other county is taking us. I don't know. It could be that too. But regardless, we feel like the population is really manageable and things are going better there. What I'm excited about is to share about a mentor program that's coming in to Ted Lechner called Side by Side, and it is being run by a former federal probation officer who is retired and works in some ministry type programs. And then the man who owns Jersey Mike's here, they're offering this side-by-side mentoring program that includes cooking, budgeting, life skills, a gym that they have partnered with, the Apex Gym, for some of the kids who are able to go out on the shelter care side and other kids who would be released on bond. So I think that's kind of a positive thing. Our Tumbleweed Runaway program also has a permanent bed held for them on the shelter care side. And if any of you all know, before I was a judge, I was a prosecutor, but I also worked for Tumbleweed as their crisis counselor for 10 years while I was a prosecutor. And it's difficult to find beds for kids who have left their homes that are safe. And so this is kind of a big deal to have a bed that's paid for and reserved, that if a youth needs somewhere to go, there is actually a placement that we can find. So I'm excited about that. Also, this might sound silly maybe to the law enforcement folks or you will understand it, but Ted Lechner now has the ability to fingerprint youths that are coming into the facility at the facility, as opposed to taking them into the adult jail to do that. And I think that's really a big deal. It's similar to separating youth court cases, not shackling kids, not introducing them to that environment. And so that just started, and that's been 20 years in the making for us. You would think that it wouldn't have taken that long to get smart, but I think that's really smart. And I think probably having Sam Bofto's law enforcement experience and time running the jail has helped with that. So I think that's really great. At our youth detention, the officers are they're going to be undergoing motivational interview training, and they've also received a guardian device, like I'm going to call it a body cam sort of, but it's handheld. And during that, it could remind an officer who's doing checks on a kid, maybe a kid who's at high risk or suicidal or something, to check on a time, and it sets an alarm for the officers to go into their area and check them frequently. It does record the interaction so that can be used for therapy or could be used, they feel like it's going to be a good prevention tool and a training tool and help the officers out. So I thought that all of those were really good things. And then this is my last thing. And I wrote to Kim and I wrote to you, Mr. Chair, and Jeremy, I think today, as I was in that trial, to let you know that in January, my docket will be considerably different. All of the large civil lawsuits, the probates, the divorces, the child abuse and neglect removal cases, we will have 10 judges in Yellowstone County. 2 will be appointed, and very excited to kind of split up our dockets through a specialization. And I've chosen criminal and youth and then the sanity cases for my docket for the next 3 years. So hopefully that will allow some really concentrated efforts in the youth area and with my 4 colleagues who will be doing that same pot of cases. I think that's everything. I hope I didn't take too much time, and I'm so sad to be missing. There was a whim that this case might be settling, but it didn't. So here we are on day 2, and I think we'll probably be lucky to finish by the end of the week.
Well, thank you for stepping in, and tell David not to take offense. We wanted to hear from him if you weren't available, but we definitely wanted to hear from you. So
he's still here, and he's going to stick with you all, and he's taking frantic notes for me. Not that you don't send out great notes, but I didn't know. I did email David from the bench and ask if you needed a quorum or you had one or you needed to vote on anything. Just let me know, and I'm happy to take a break, but I'm sad to miss all the live updates. So,
well, we appreciate that. I think we're okay with a quorum, but
okay.
We'll definitely keep that in mind.
Well, I just hope you all know, when I ever get to meet you in person, I don't think that I'm more important than anybody here, and I appreciate you sticking me in. I don't know what to do about the regular docket stuff and normal meetings. It just never, it's such a moving target.
We
thank
completely
you.
Understand that. Yeah. Yep. No problem. Thanks,
Well,
Judge.
If I don't see you all, have a Merry Christmas, Happy Holiday. Thank you for everything. And
You bet.
Does anybody have questions or anything? Or I'll go away back to my business dispute.
Jeremy has a question for you, Judge.
Yes.
Judge Nicely, I sent you over we had talked about that community service piece, and I sent that over to you. Did you see it?
I did see it, and I responded to you today telling you I had hoped maybe we could chat about it. But here's I think it looks really great. My one concern is if we had a youth who had some community service to do and we had them do work on the council, I would be surprised if any youth had enough community service to spend a ton of time on the council. So I kind of wondered what your thoughts were. They would probably get, 10 hours or 30 hours, or what would that look like? That was the part I wanted to visit with you, maybe offline, maybe of what your ideas, because they could certainly attend the meeting if school and everything allowed, but I just wasn't quite sure how we would fill their hours. And I love the form, and I think it's great, and I think it would be perfect for reporting out to youth court services, probation, and to the courts that had ordered it. And I loved the kind of restorative justice philosophy where, depending on what they had done, they could bring that to the council, or maybe, kind of be placed in an area that fit, what the community service was given for. So, and I felt like the form was really great about that too. So, but I really think I'll be in this trial all week and probably Monday, Tuesday. Is there a chance that maybe later next week we could visit?
Yes,
If you're
yes,
in?
absolutely.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Anybody else?
Any other
Thanks.
questions for the judge? Okay, thank you, Judge
all so
Nicely.
much. Thank you.
I probably should have went with Lila because Lila is getting out of class. So we'll go to Lila next. And I don't know, Lila, if you're still with us.
Hi, yeah, I'm still here. Yeah, so I'm Lily Giverson. I will have to leave a little bit early so I can get back for my afternoon classes. But basically what I've been up to is I'm the chair of the Youth Justice Council, and then I'm the president of the 406 Youth Coalition. And so primarily a lot of what we focus on with those is like prevention of youth substance abuse. And then me personally, I've been working a lot on like preventions of youth like sexploitation, primarily through social media. And so a big thing we've done recently with the Youth Coalition is we went, me and a few other youth leaders went and testified at the recent legislative session on SB 390, which we did get to pass. And what that is basically an indoor vape ban. So now you can no longer vape indoors. We're currently working on a flavor ban in Beaverhead County, as well as a distance update. So basically saying, you have to be this far from someone if you want to be vaping. I've been working with one of our county commissioners, like I mentioned, trying to just make people, especially parents, more aware of like sexual violence that goes on online, specifically with younger people. Yeah, that's pretty much what I've been up to.
And I think with the work you're doing with the commissioner, I think you're going to Washington, D.C. here in a month or so, huh?
Yeah, I think in February is what it's looking like right now.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks, Lila.
Thank you.
You bet. Rachel.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rachel Wonderscheid. I am the director of the Montana After School Alliance, and we're an organization that works statewide to try and create more opportunities for kids, youth, anybody really over the age of 5, not through the school system. So that looks like after school programs, summer programs, and summer camps, Boys and Girls Clubs, YMCAs. Some of them are based in schools, but there's a wide variety. And the idea behind it is that these programs are really critical to helping kids thrive and to helping their parents, stay healthy and well and have their own jobs. And so we try to both promote the programs and advocate for them, and then also provide them with resources and different opportunities to get trained on new topics. And so we work, again, statewide with all of them. I also am a former youth attorney, and so I kind of have some background with this space as well, but moved into this to be a little bit more in the prevention space. And our organization has had a really great follow. We've had a lot of different opportunities that we've provided to programs around the state. We had a series of community conversations on AI and how to work with kids surrounding AI topics, specifically more in the out of school context, but also there were teachers and librarians present. Those went really well. Kind of the idea behind that is that after school is actually a great space to be getting kids these resources in a way that they're not cheating, because they're in this after school program. So can they really learn it and use it in a healthy way? And so trying to talk about some of the good and the bad at the same time. And we're having a virtual one of those if you're at all interested in attending. That will be next Thursday, the 11th. I can drop that in the chat after this. And then we're also kind of gearing up for some winter offerings. And then we will be having our spring conference in Great Falls on April 15th through the 17th. So I hope that does not conflict with the high-tiered one, Christy. But if it's close, that'd be awesome, because then I could just stay in Great Falls. and do both. Um, but if any of you are at all interested in getting more information about that conference or attending or presenting, we're always interested in getting more information about, whatever resources we have across the state to our programs. Yeah, I think that's all I need to give this morning, and great to see you all and be with you even virtually.
Thank you, Rachel. I think Jeremy has a question for
Hey,
you.
Rachel, can you send me over the information on that so that I can move that along?
The conference?
Yeah.
Yep, I will definitely. We're getting like hotel finally situated. So I might send it over in a week or two, but we will have, I would love for you to promote that along. That'd be great.
Thank you.
And what are your dates on that, Christy? Or for your conference?
Let me check with Marissa. Do we have dates for the conference narrowed down yet?
We don't have dates narrowed down yet. We still need to meet with Great Falls Public Schools to make sure they have the buildings available, but we should have dates very soon.
Yeah.
And
Try not to do those days.
Are you guys aware that the School Counselor Association conference is April 9th and 10th?
And then the child abuse conference is the week before that or the week after it or something. April is just crazy. So we might go late March or early May too. So we don't know exactly what's going to work for Great Falls yet. But Rachel, could you also send me the information on the conference, or Jeremy, whenever you get it? I'd love to see it.
I think Jeremy will push it out to everyone here.
Okay.
And Marissa, good segue to you. I know you're not quite on officially, but we'll go ahead. I don't think Bree's on, right, Kim? Okay, so Marissa, we'll go to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me. I am Marissa Bostwick from the Montana Office of Public Instruction. I oversee the Title I-D funds for neglected and delinquent students in Montana public schools and correctional facilities under the age of 22. I also am the foster care point of contact for the state. A lot of great things going on. We have started monthly trainings in collaboration with DPHHS. So we have the foster care points of contacts from all the public schools on the trainings, but also the caseworkers from DPHHS. So that helps to bring us together and to push out the information that we all need to help make foster care students and neglected and delinquent students and homeless students within the public schools successful. Our next meeting for the high-tiered community of practice will be in January. That will be a virtual meeting. If you'd like to be added to it and haven't received a meeting invite, please let me know. I'm happy to add you. And we will be having the University of Montana and Christy Hendricks present at that meeting, just the supports that are in place for a smooth handoff for neglected and delinquent students that may be leaving high school and going into post-secondary and things like that. We've been having a lot of conversations lately about modified graduation and what that looks like for these students that have experienced educational disruptions within our schools, and how we can help them to graduate through HiSET options, through the proficiency diploma, through modified graduation. So lots of good things going on. These kids are not being forgotten, and we want to make sure that they are not and that they don't fall through the cracks. So thank you for having me. And if you'd like to be added to the COP mailing list or come to our meetings, we'd love to have you. Or even the trainings that are in collaboration between DPHHS and OPI, please let me know. I'd love to add you. So good to see everyone.
Thank you, Marissa. I did just see Judge Nicely's email, and also Kim and Jeremy. Bree also emailed us. She had some clients this morning, so she's not on, obviously. I'll finish up real quick with Roundtable Board of Public Ed. We hosted at our school in early September, and it was awesome. McCall Flynn and the rest of the board was there. Susie Hedeline, Superintendent OPI, was there. Angela McLean with Higher Ed was there. Several other folks, and it was great to, very proud of our school and our district. And so it was great to sort of showcase our district, our school, and what some of our kids are doing. They also, for a lot of you that don't know, we are two different districts in Dillon. A K-8 district is my district. Oh, by the way, I'm Randy Shipman, superintendent of the elementary school district in Dillon. Didn't follow my own rules. But I'm the K-8 elementary superintendent, and then we have a different high school district. There's only a couple of us left in the state like that because Powell County High School, Deer Lodge Elementary just consolidated or unified last year. So anyways, so also the new superintendent, Josh Patterson, up at the high school, we kind of co-hosted. We hosted them at our school, but we kind of did a social together and things like that. So that was a lot of fun and very insightful for us to be part of that process with their board meeting, and with Marissa on, and certainly Christy has a lot of OPI experience. Not everything was great. The testing part is still a huge issue, and I'm jumping ahead in my little thing here, but mass testing is still very problematic. We have some kids that have always been highly proficient on past testing. We know they're highly proficient in our classrooms, and yet they score a 0 on the written part of the test. And there's some real problems, and we brought those up at the Board of Public Ed meeting. Those folks on that board were very interested in it. They know, I believe OPI knows there's sort of an issue with, they're still working out the kinks of that testing. But honestly, the sooner you can do that, the better it is, because our kids and our parents across the state, not just in our district, are freaking out because their kids who have always been highly successful in the classroom are being shown, they're getting 0s on the test. And it's bizarre that they even get a 0 when it's fully written. So that is a big issue. But I know they're working out the kinks there. And we did just get our results back from last year. And once again, Dillon Elementary is above the state average on every single test at every single grade level, and we're very proud of that. But it was great to host the Board of Public Ed. Appreciate McCall Flynn, their executive director, and working that out with us. She has ties to Dillon. Her father's from Dillon. In fact, her aunt works for us. So, and I know McCall. So it was kind of a fun thing to do. And then going back to something you said earlier, George, along that 21, you were talking about the conference and what other states do with kids. It's interesting that in education, and there has been, it's always been on the books, but now there's a big push in the latest legislative session on making sure that we're meeting the needs of kids beyond the age of 18, up to 21 or up to 22 with their IEP goals. So if they're a special ed kid, we do still consider them a student until 22. So kind of goes in line with what you were saying a little bit. I had major surgery on my foot here on September 15th. And so that has been, personally, that's kind of been a setback for me, especially with the next few things I'm about to tell you that happened in our school. We had one of the worst things that a school could ever experience, the death of a student in a crosswalk. That was a tough deal, and I'm sure a lot of you heard about that, but I had to deal with that just 6-7 days out from my surgery. Of course, we're still dealing with that. Terrible tragedy. And then we had to life flight a kid out. We didn't do it, family did it, but life flighted a kid out for bacterial meningitis and the implications of what that means in a school because of the contagion, highly contagious disease and things like that. So we've had some, and that happened, I think, 14 days out from my surgery. So it's been quite a fall for us. All in all, everybody's doing well. Obviously, that family is going to deal with that for the rest of their lives. But all in all, everyone's doing well and things are going good. But testing is an issue, and we just got our results back, like I said, and I don't know what you can do about it, Marissa, but if there's anybody you can bend an ear to over there, Julie, Dr. Myrtle was at the Board of Public Ed meeting, and we talked quite a bit to her. And to be honest, I think some of it fell on deaf ears with some of the folks, and I think other folks took it very, very seriously and have heard from a lot of different stakeholders around the state that it is a serious problem. And it's one that is, like, I really don't complain. I tell my teachers, hang in there, let the process work out, and everything is going to come out in the wash, and they're going to figure it out, and so on and so forth. But we're really causing great damage to our kids right now. because you guys are telling us that we have to share those results with the parents and the child. And it's destroying some of our kids in terms of their why am I even trying to take this test when I put all this effort into it? I've always been highly proficient, and I literally got a 0 on the test, not a 1, not a 2, not a 3, not a 4, a 0 on the test. So if there's anything you can do about that, myself, my counselor, my principals, my teachers, I'm certain my students and parents would appreciate anything that can be done there sooner than later. And
I
then Lila
appreciate you letting
mentioned-
me know. I'll pass it on. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Yeah,
Thank
and please check with my testing coordinator, Shannon Williams, my counselor in the middle school. She's the one that heads all that up and gets all the feedback. She was involved in the Department of Ed meeting and discussions, but please, she can give you all the particulars. And I don't know, like I said, I usually don't worry too much about it. It's going to work out in the wash, but we really are crushing some kids, literally crushing their, their psyche in terms of taking these tests, and not math so much, I don't think, but definitely ELA. So,
okay.
And then
Thank you so
Lila
much.
mentioned, you bet. And then Lila mentioned, and I'm not trying to be critical, by the way, Marissa, I'm just being completely honest.
I appreciate it, and I
Yeah.
get it, and I will pass it on. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I know Tim Tharp, Dr. Tharp, and some of those other board members really took it seriously. I also know that Department of Public Ed is different than OPI, is different than local school boards, and and that's different than the legislature. But anything that can be done, I think sooner rather than later would be great. And then Lila mentioned the 406 Youth Coalition. We continue in our community to have this great thing going on. Lila has been a huge, I hope she's still on and is listening. She has been a huge part of leading our kids, and we have quite a few kids that have been to the legislature that have testified. Lila referred to that. They've been to our city council to testify, and they've gotten our city council to put signage, lights, and cameras up at our city park, signage against, anti-tobacco and anti-vaping and all those types of things. So they've really done a tremendous job. We had a huge gala the other night, 153 people there, and gave out some awards to some of our students who have done a great job and some of our adults who have helped support kids in terms of protective factors and at risk and things like that. And the last thing I'd mention along those same lines is, and relating to this council, is the danger of marijuana and vaping and all those things that marijuana continues to be, the whole THC and the level and all that stuff continues to be so different than it was 30 years ago. And yet I think a lot of people think it's the same. And we're really destroying some kids' lives well, not just kids, I think, but some other lives in terms of the availability, the usage, and all those types of things. I think a lot of things are positively down with kids in terms of maybe drinking and sex and all those, a lot of things are trending down. But marijuana is not, and that is really affecting our kids, especially when it comes to vaping and things like that. That's really what's going on in my world, and I appreciate all of your guys' discussion. And I know for Kayla, our new director, I think hopefully that gives her some good insight into into the great diversity that we have on this board and the different things that you guys do for kids and adults. Okay, Executive Director Bragg is going to move on to one of the big things we're doing in our meeting today is discussing the governor's report. And I think Director Bragg is going to tell us, he's going to review and discuss the past recommendations, and then we're going to look at maybe some new recommendations. And so, Kayla?
Yeah. Kim, you want to wait? Yeah, thanks. I appreciate everyone, and yeah, it's this is my really first meeting. The first one I was just, I think it was my first week maybe. So this has been nice to actually get to know everybody a little bit more, and really appreciate you and all the work that you're doing for your communities. So Jeremy and I and Griselda, we've been looking at the governor's report, what's required just past reports and really how we can enhance it. And one of those, one of the pieces of it, a really important piece of the governor's report, are our recommendations from the YJC. And so for the upcoming year, we want to look at how to really how can this really be a plan throughout the year to develop recommendations with the council, to have this continuing conversation. That way, when we get to September, and we're looking forward to that next December meeting to finalize the report, that we're not doing it the day before the board meeting, because we want to have these meaningful conversations throughout the year. And so a few ideas that we're working on, are going to work on for the new year, is to really develop a recommendation process and timeline for the YJC. And that way, those recommendations are done throughout the year. We can track maybe conversations or themes that you guys have at meetings, and we can present them to the YJC to say, here's what has come up in meetings, here's some themes or comments that you've made, or rough draft recommendations. And then when we get to September through December, when we're really working on the governor's report, we can work with the YJC to have a really good list in September, and then that can go into our December report. So what we're looking at internally for the YJC, and hopefully we'll have this kind of a draft or some ideas prepared for the March meeting, but just a plan, a work plan. How do we want to address recommendations to get them formalized for our governor's report? How do we want to track the conversations that we're having in meetings about recommendations? And then tracking official recommendations. So the official recommendations being the ones that you guys approve, and then also the Board of Crime Control, they approve. So how are we tracking those? And then eventually, 5 years out, we're still tracking the recommendations and can see the outcomes. Has the legislature adopted, 10 of your recommendations? Have we changed some of our practices internally to address some of the recommendations? So what's being done to address those recommendations and see the progress on them? Allowing us to track the official recommendations also lets us see what you guys are bringing up as concerns or issues or themes or priority areas. That way, hopefully that can help inform for other decision making as a council, and also inform the board. Just looking ahead, if we have a process and a plan and we're tracking recommendations, then we're gathering that data and we could present that to the Board of Crime Control to say the Youth Justice Council has, over the last 2 years, has identified X number of recommendations, this number of targets, youth diversion, this number of targets, mental health concerns, or whatever it may be. So just looking at ways that we can gather data and have really actionable, robust recommendations, not only for the governor's office, but for the legislature and for the board, and to help us make some additional informed decisions moving forward. So today I have, I'm going to go over past recommendations, and then Jeremy's going to look at some new recommendations. But I served on the Maternal Mortality Review Committee, and I had a really great experience from that committee on how they did recommendations, and they followed the CDC guidelines. And I'm not suggesting that we follow this method today, but I do think we can. One of the things that Jeremy and Criselda and I are going to do is look at ways that we can form these recommendations. That way they're actionable. And one of the recommendations, or one way that we can do this, is through who should do what when, or who should consider doing what when. That has been a way to really formalize a recommendation, to know who we're suggesting or who we think should do whatever it is, and then also a time frame. This can be challenging, and I just want to recognize that sometimes it does take. I remember a whole meeting and we only got through a few recommendations, and so it's not always easy, but it does really The outcome is some really nice recommendations. Working on some other committees, I've assigned different impact levels to recommendations. So this is something that we can consider moving forward. But again, we'll put together some research for the March meeting for us to consider. But just what level of impact does that recommendation have? Is it on providers, like teachers, prosecutors, therapists at the individual level, like a provider level? Is it at an agency or facility? So maybe a law enforcement agency or a county attorney's office? Is it a system level, a community level? So looking at a potential level of impact for that recommendation. Some other committees I've worked on, they looked at different themes. So again, looking at whatever recommendations we have, what are some themes that we're seeing or trends? And then some other considerations being, do we want to talk about per recommendation, the benefits of it or barriers or maybe a priority level? So this is just an example. We're going to work on getting some research together, some ideas together, and then have this a future conversation for us to decide how we want to do recommendations moving forward. Are there any questions about that? Thoughts?
I don't have a question, but I have a comment. I like it because so often we do things and there's never follow through or accountability. Or, we write things down or whatever. And this sort of forces who's going to do it, what is it you're going to do, when are you going to get it done? So I like it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously if it's another agency, it's not
right. It's not on us.
It's not something they can do, right. But it's at least us saying, here's what our formal recommendations are.
Yeah.
And I think there's ways other than this we can do it, but to also gather data about our recommendations. That's really informing as an agency what we're seeing, what our trends are as a council, and recommending, systemic change. So again, this is just a suggestion or recommendation. We'll put together some other information moving forward and hopefully get something for March to continue the conversation and figure out how we want to do this moving forward for the year 2026.
Can I see if there's other questions?
Yeah, go ahead.
Are there other questions or comments about this for Kayla or for Jeremy? Anybody? I jumped in too fast. I should have let you guys go first. Any other thoughts?
That I agreed with you, Randy. I like it, Kim.
Thank you, Mike. Any other comments, thoughts? Okay, Kayla, back to you.
Thanks. Are there any, has anyone worked on a committee or with an agency to formulate recommendations in a way that you want to share today?
I would just say, I'll jump in since nobody is. I'll just say, yeah, a lot of times we put stuff together and I don't mean just here, but on various boards or even in my school district, we talk about, doing this, but there's not really a clear roadmap. And I think this gives a little clear roadmap to sort of the follow through. And that's always the problem, right? Because Tina, you do 10,000 different things, right? And so, or George, you're dealing with 10,000 different people. And it's always that sort of that getting people to follow through. And I think I like that first thing of the who's going to do it, when are you going to do it, how are you going to do it? Yeah.
And this, if this is a method that we adopt, and we'll look at different ways as well and bring it to the council, but this is data that would be useful for you too. So, I mean, if you wanted to know, as we start to build the data on the recommendations, it's something that you could use. If you want to know how many recommendations are, tagged with the theme, mental health or diversion or whatever it may be, school safety, we could share that information with you, and it just continues to build on what we're doing as a council and a board. So I pulled some examples that I'm familiar with. The Maternal Mortality Review Committee, again, they follow CDC guidance, but you can see here, providers should initiate a referral and a warm handoff to a behavioral health clinician during the same appointment when patients are scoring high on mental health or substance use screenings. And then they tag that with a mental health theme, and it's a provider level impact. So you can see that who should do what when, and then also that theme and the impact level. Another example is all state, county, and city systems that involve community member interactions should require all employees to attend trauma-informed care training, resiliency training, and adverse childhood experiences upon commencement of employment and renewed as determined by state, county, and city systems. And they assign that with historical trauma and system level impact. I pulled in a couple examples from Department of Justice that I used to work for the Office of Victim Services at DOJ, and I had the opportunity to sit on some of the child fatality case reviews there, and we provide recommendations to some agencies. And so one of their recommendations here is DPHHS and CFSD establish a formal collaboration to develop a comprehensive public education campaign on reporting child neglect and abuse. Partners may include CASA schools, service providers, medical providers, nonprofit agencies dedicated to youth, law enforcement agencies, courts, and faith communities, and others. And then the examples on the right are from the Coalition for Juvenile Justice. They provided recommendations, a paper to Congress, and these are their recommendations so a few of their recommendations that they provided to Congress, and I thought they were well written as well. So these are just examples, but really the takeaway is Jeremy, Criselda, and I, we're going to look at how we're doing recommendations and then get a practice together, a plan, and then that plan is something that we'll do each year. That way we know within the year what our expectations are to identify and produce recommendations.
Okay, any questions or comments? Okay, looks good.
All right, so what I wanted to do is look at the year 21 through 23, our recommendations. And I recognize that some of the folks on today may not have been part of the YJC when these recommendations were made. But what I want to do is just go through them and see, like, basically a go or no go. Like, let's look at any of the recommendations that we want to move forward for this year's report. We can, and then look at, do we want to revise it to who should do what when? Some of the recommendations may not be relevant anymore. So please, just if they're not relevant, or if you are aware if they've been implemented, or maybe a law has changed that impacts it. If you have any updates on the past recommendations, please let us know. But I want to go through the ones that, the way we'll do it is we'll start with, after my review, I found the ones that are bolded here, they have come up in each report. So first we're going to look at the bolded recommendations from the governor's reports, from past reports, and then we'll move on to the ones that have not been as consistent in reports. So the bolded recommendations have come up in each year's report from 21 to 23 or 24. So those are pretty consistent from the council. And then we'll look at the ones that haven't been repeated. So next slide, please. Thanks, Kim. Again, these are just a mix, and we'll look at these bolded ones here. And so next slide. Okay. So the ones that have been repeated throughout the years are on the screen here, and you can see that they're pretty much the same, maybe a couple different words. Let me see, or they may be exactly the same, maybe that last one. So we'll just start with the first one on the left, because again, these are the ones that have come up in every report. So we'll just start with it. Let us know if it's still relevant, if we want to move it to this year's report, and then if we do, how do we want to revise it? potentially for that who should do what when theme or format. So encourage the use of social emotional learning programs in schools.
I think that's still extremely relevant.
Yes. I'm just wondering in our political climate if it's going to be accepted.
Or how you word it.
Right.
How to word it?
Yes, because so being a former OPI employee, when we had to quit using the words social and emotional learning, we had to rename it something else. I think it's very imperative, and thinking about helping to stop that cradle to prison pipeline. How do we teach kids to become more resilient and identify their emotions and be able to work through them?
Self-regulate.
Right. I mean, is it the preventative piece before they get down the road? So I'm all for it.
And these are older recommendations, so some of the terminology may not be used anymore or relevant or that kind of thing. So we may come across this again. Thoughts online?
I agree with.
Go ahead,
Go for it,
Rachel.
Christy. This is Rachel. I agree with Tina very much. It definitely has to be in there. And I do feel like we have. It's been so frustrating with the terminology and the attacks on what really needs to be getting to kids. It kind of feels like almost social emotional learning. People have forgotten that we are mad about that. But I think that generally the premise of that one we've got to keep in there. So I'm okay with slightly changing the name, but definitely going forward with it. On to you, Chris.
I'm about the exact same thing. I'm with Tina and Rachel that keep it in there, but we're gonna have to change it so it will be allowed in our schools.
So, I don't have kids. I'm not involved in a lot of school things. And so you're going to have to help me understand who provides this programming or has provided this programming in the past.
Schools.
Individual schools, they have the discretion on how they do that. Okay. So.
Right. Yeah, pretty much. I mean, a lot of, yeah, it's up to the individual school. A lot of in K-5 settings, you'll have the counselor do more of the social emotional stuff, SPED. And then there are, depends what curriculum's adopted by the district to implement social emotional learning. In the past, I think social emotional learning, and I probably fall a little bit different than a lot in this room on the language. I think the language is kind of a big deal, and I think it goes both ways. But I think it's always been there. We've always taught kids, whether you call it character traits or social emotional or whatever terminology you want to use. I think we've always taught kids, and I think it's always been a positive thing to say you should share, you should not yell at another kid, you should learn to share your toys or whatever the case is at whatever grade level it is. And so I can't remember, Christy, what's the new
Whole child skill development.
Whole child skill development.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever the new terminology is, that is, I hate to say it because I'm more on that side, but more acceptable to those people, then I think the concept has never gone away. And I don't think Republican or Democrat or progressive or liberal or conservative or whatever cares. I think everyone cares about kids' emotional health and well-being and being able to self-regulate and being able to become productive citizens when they leave our K-12 systems. So however you get to that, I think the premise or the concept is still, has always been relevant and always will be relevant, I think. Because if they don't learn it in the public school system, which I'm not saying that's the only system out there, there are homeschools and there are private schools and all that. But for the state of Montana, the bulk of our kids go to public schools, and that's where, just to take it to the nth degree, sex ed. I mean, there are definitely different views on teaching sex ed in schools, but if we don't do something about sex ed in school, then some kids will just simply never. Certainly that should be a parent responsibility, but that doesn't always happen in some homes. So I guess it's just to what degree, and how is it going to be palatable or whatever with the language. And unfortunately, we've had to change the language to make it more palatable for different people. But I think we've always done it, and I think we always will do it. Social, emotional, or character traits, or whole child, or whatever terminology.
It's just wordsmith.
Yes, it's just wordsmith, exactly.
And thank you, Randy. And I do think, I mean, the recommendations are in the governor's report is a really, I think, an important vehicle for, I mean, it can make change, right? And so it's a vehicle for change. And so that's why I bring up the recommendations on how we format them, on how we make them actionable, on coming up with a plan that we do every year, because they are really important. And it is something the agency is recommending from the Board of Crime Control, from the YJC. So I think the terminology matters. I think it's important that we have these conversations, and I think it's quality over quantity. And so we may not have a lot of recommendations, and that's okay, but as long as they're actionable. So when, hearing from folks, Tina, Randy, thinking about, is it Montana school districts? Is it someone had mentioned counselors? Is it the counselors? Where does this live to say Montana school district should consider adopting whole child skill development, or is that not the right
vehicle or
avenue to go? Like, what are we recommending?
Would some of you on the Marissa and Christy and Mike and Ray, I mean, all of you have different perspectives. I don't want to be the only one to say so, especially if I'm on the other side. So other people speak up. Is it important, and how would you word it? Christy, I know you've dealt with it through OPI. Marissa, I'm certain you have. Others on Megan from higher ed. I mean, what would you guys say?
Go ahead.
Okay. In the chat, Megan did put something. She said other terms that have been used are character education, life skills, soft skills, relational skills, etc.
Yeah, very well said. That the word character skills, or character. What did she say? Character. The first one.
Oh God, Landon just interrupted. So didn't interrupt. he said something. Character education.
Character education, I think, is for me, it's a very, what's the word? It's an easy term. Everyone is happy with character. But yeah, thank you, Megan, for that. What did Landon say?
It says encourage the use of programs in school which help youth build character, handle difficult emotions, and solve real world problems.
Yeah, well said. From a therapist, of course, or a counselor. Yeah.
Do we want to look at, Sam, School Administrators of Montana, did a mental health survey of schools across the state. And I believe they gathered information on social and emotional curriculum and what schools were doing. So that might be some really pertinent information because I would believe that for the most part, most schools are doing that already. I just think, schools always need money. Like, we always need money to support things, and we always need time. And how do we incorporate that? Because some schools do it way better than other schools. And I guess for me, how do we support? I mean, it's a recommendation, great. but then I guess from a board member, I think, well, great that you recommend that, but how do we incorporate that?
Well said. It's time and money. Money
I
is one
just
thing
have-
because,
Oh, sorry, Randy.
go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I think this would be a really great aspect to bring up at the Counselors Association meeting in Bozeman in April. You know, a lot of the buzzwords that we're hearing right now, and I put them into the chat, are social awareness and responsible decision-making curriculum. But I think there are some really amazing things in this area happening in Montana public schools. And I think that, you know, the people on the ground are the experts a lot of times, but I'm happy to reach out and see if we could send out a survey to see what people are using in the public schools. Anything I can do to help on this end too.
I think sending it to the counselor group would be great because they're going to have the best sense of character ed or social emotional learning or whatever that's out there. They're going to have a good idea of what's being, in fact, they're probably often implementing it, especially in the lower grades. So that'd be great. Tina?
Can I, so the Montana Counselors Association is also doing a survey right now, which has, I think they're gathering that same information already. So I think we have pots of information that we can look at. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Sure.
So
if I can do anything, let me know though.
Okay.
So this is Kayla. So what I'm hearing is maybe, do we want to do a no-go and wait? And maybe this makes its way back in for next year's report. So we want time to gather information, but not have it a formal recommendation right now.
We only put these recommendations out every 2 years.
Well, we didn't really do it each year.
On the governors, but our recommendations go to the governor in 2 years.
I mean, the hard part for me is I don't want to not recommend it because I think it is such a powerful prevention piece that I think if we leave it off there, we're doing ourselves a disservice and our schools and our kids. So how can we put it on there, but also say we are gathering more information about what is being done in schools? I don't know, somehow. But I think for me, removing it removes that big prevention piece.
I would echo that. And I would say all we really need to do now is just change the word social emotional. That is the kicker. So encourage the use of character trait learning programs in schools, or encourage the use of self-regulation, whatever. If we could just come up with the new words, then I agree with Tina. Taking it out now, I don't think sends the right message. I think it's still, and I think that's why you've seen it come up year after year after year. I think it's still we have kindergarten kids coming into our school now, and I blame a lot of it on COVID and schools shutting down and et cetera, which we didn't, but except for when the governor made us shut down in March of 2020 or 2021? 2020. We shut down then, but otherwise we were open the whole time. But we had kindergarten kids coming in, which now are about 4th and 5th grade, who were so violent. It was unbelievable, just destroying things in schools. We had never seen anything like it, 5-year-old kids. And so I think that I would not want to take the social emotional or character trait or some of those other words Megan used out of the recommendations. Other people chime in.
Christy had something.
Christy, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that I love Landon's language. I think that would fit perfectly, and it will stay with no matter what the new buzzwords are.
Can you read it again, Kim?
Just as I love Landon's language, it is easy to.
No. Could you read Landon's language? Sorry.
Too much going on right now. All right, Landon, here we are. Encourage the use of programs in school which help youth build character, handle difficult emotions, and solve real-world problems.
Love it.
So if we took Landon's recommendation, is it Montana schools should consider insert Landon's recommendation?
Yeah. Or Montana public schools. I don't know how you word that, but I mean, I don't know that we have the same whatever over private and other schools. Do people agree with Landon's words, or do they want to, or do you have other ideas? Anyone else? I don't know, Kayla, how long you want us to go on this, but I do think this is a big one.
I can do that.
No, for right.
Jeremy, what do you think?
I do have just one quick thought. I really like Landon's words, and there's a tiny part of me that is frustrated that we have to do this still because it is so important, and so part of me wants to make like two of them, where one, we keep the social emotional learning language, so we're not acquiescing and not saying that isn't important, and then add another one in case that one gets flagged, but another one that is Landon's language, so that we're doubling down on the fact that we think it's important. I don't know. That might be harder to do, but everyone thought.
It's a good point, Kim.
So what I can do is I can, after the meeting, I can get this chat and I can send all this information in here that everybody said in their work, whatever recommendations, send them to Jeremy, and then Jeremy can send them out. So I will collect all the information that is in the chat and send it to Jeremy.
Okay. Jeremy, you want to?
Hopefully it's up later.
Okay. Anybody else before we move on from this one? Do we all agree that this should be in there in some fashion? Looks like a lot of thumbs up. Okay. Does anyone else want to say something before we move on from the first one? Okay. And to your point, Rachel, I think you do have a good point. I hate the fact that we always change words and just do the same thing or have the same meaning, but sometimes we have to do that. I agree with you though, Rachel, that you are sort of giving in a little bit. But okay, so we move to the next one.
Yeah. So the next one is require courts to consider time served during sentencing for juveniles held in pretrial detention facilities. The other one that was similar, required courts to consider time served during sentencing for juveniles. Maybe the same thing.
Sorry, it's not sharing anymore. I don't know what that means.
And I think that was a big one for Judge Nicely and obviously some of our law enforcement folks. And again, that's probably why it kept showing up.
Was David having any information about what they're currently doing?
David, are you still on? Did you hear that?
Yes, I'm here. I do not have anything from Judge Nicely on that topic. If she's able to pop back in, I'll flag it for her.
Okay.
So
give us an idea of something that has been done with that, or is because they might be putting that in place. We don't know.
Yeah. So this has come up, like I said, in multiple reports as a recommendation. Do we want to move this on to this year's report?
Okay, I'll speak up again since nobody is. Just want to move it along. Yes, I think we do, because I do think it's important to some people. I guess where it's going to come down to, Kayla, is how many do we end up with, and then do we want to prioritize those? I'm not speaking for me. I think I think Judge Nicely would say that this was important. Rachel, you have experience in this field. I don't know what your feeling is. David, you obviously kind of have a clue here. What's your thoughts on it? Yeah, I do think it's a big deal. I know it's been a big point of discussion in the years that I've been on this council. Yeah.
The only input that I could provide would be that time served is governed by statute. And we have a number of recent new decisions from the Montana Supreme Court that have kind of slammed the courts for not hewing as closely to the wording of the statute as possible. So I don't know that there's a lot of flexibility unless this comes from the legislature. that would be my input.
And I think that's exactly why we would want to make this recommendation to the governor so that there might be a push potentially through the legislature. So yeah, thank you, David, for that insight. Rachel, do you have anything?
Yeah, I haven't looked at the statutes for a couple of years, so mine is not as up to date as I'd like it to be on this. But I do think it's really important. And again, we're more just telling the governor what we think is important and out there and trying to get him to to consider some of these issues. So lifting something like this up and saying it's still needed to be considered, I think is all we are doing. But that's important in its own way. So.
Yeah, and I think it is important that we remember that is so well said, Rachel. That is exactly what we're charged with doing, is going to the governor with recommendations that we, as this council, and ultimately the Board of Crime Control, says or agrees with, that we're saying we think this is what you should look at. So whether that happens or not, I don't think we should be concerned about, and whether it's just simply what we as a council thinks is important for the governor to consider. So anybody else have a comment on number 2 there? And or can we all agree that at least for this time being that we leave it on the list? And maybe if we have too many recommendations, and I don't know, Kayla, what's too many or what's too few, but you mentioned that, it could be a few, it could be a lot, but maybe when we get done here, just for sake of time, should we keep it on there for now, I guess? Couple thumbs up. Okay. So I think for now.
Yeah. So would we say youth courts should consider time served during sentencing for juveniles held in pretrial detention facilities? Is it youth courts? Who's ultimately making those decisions?
Well, either statute, either the legislature or the judges.
I mean, I think the recommendation is usually made by the juvenile probation officers to the attorneys and the judges. So we could expand it from just courts to kind of those other offices as well.
Youth courts, probation, and I'm sorry, I didn't catch the other.
I mean, the attorneys are kind of in there, in those two, so probably require probation and courts to probation offices and courts.
And I think if we go back, if I remember, the discussion on this has always been trying to treat juveniles different, better, maybe. And it came up earlier, I think, in Judge Nicely's report, not shackling. I mean, all those things have been a big deal with this council in terms of trying to treat juveniles like juveniles, whether it's sight and sound separation, whether it's not shackling, whether it's allowing them to consider time served. And again, it's just considering, it's not mandating. Consider time served, those types of things. If that's important to this council, which I think it is, then I think it's a really good one.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is, as a recommendation, courts and probation offices should consider time served during sentencing for juveniles held in pretrial detention facilities.
Yes. And maybe it's to ask judges to consider. I mean, I don't know. That's where we need Judge Nicely's probably correct language, because it might be ask judges to consider or ask attorneys to consider time. But yeah. Anybody?
Can I add something real quick?
Absolutely.
Well, with kids that are sentenced to like Pine Hills, for example, their sentence is, I would say 95% of the time, they're sentenced till 18 years old or sooner released. And then the length of time that they actually do is based on a matrix that considers their offense history and all this other stuff. So I could see there being some issues or complexities with the time served thing, because it almost might be the case that Pine Hills, when they're doing their matrix for the length of how long a kid would stay here, for example, could add that as a factor to consider when they're determining their length of stay. So I thought that was something to consider, at least for the kids that end up being sentenced to Pine Hills.
Yeah, good point. And I don't know enough about it, so I shouldn't even say, but I feel like this already happens all the time in our adult system. I mean, I just heard it the other day. Somebody, I can't remember who it was, got convicted, but they were given credit for time served. They'd served a little over a year already. And so maybe they were convicted for 3 years and they were given credit. So I don't see it being, is it a practice that we don't give juveniles credit? I don't know. Don't know enough about it, but
Yeah, I think it's not. I did not see that being a huge practice a few years back when I was in it. So it does feel again a little bit like maybe you were saying something that is not necessary to say, but also I think your point, Randy, about how we are always trying to make sure that kids are considered differently and considered with more care is actually the root of these recommendations.
Yeah.
And so maybe it's almost better to just say that in some way. But I don't know that, and I mean, again, I haven't been in it for a few years, but I wasn't seeing it not considered for kids really.
Rachel, do you have a recommendation as to just what you suggested? Do you have a way of capturing that in a recommendation or altering what we have here on the second one?
It's hard to do it off the top of my head, but
I was going to say not yet, but I'll bet she can write one up.
Yeah, I think you could probably come up with one.
Put something together and send it over.
Yeah, I'm kind of just thinking something of require courts to, oh gosh.
Treat children like children.
Yeah, consider the young age circumstances and yeah, but exactly what Randy's saying. Treat children like children and be gentle with them.
Development stages.
Developmental age and maturity.
Yeah.
So Tina just said.
We all
Say
have
that again, Mike.
Consider developmental age and maturity, basically. So things along those lines. I'm sure somebody else was saying the same thing.
Yeah, Tina, I think was.
Yeah, what I did see, what I was very frustrated when I was in the system, I did see was that a lot of times young kids, especially if they're in the foster care system, are really, treated with the care they deserve. But about 11 or 12, when kids hit puberty and they start to look like adults, everybody in the room starts to treat them differently, but their brain has in no way caught up with that. And so I had some young, like 12-year-old boys, especially if they were not white, and if they were really, really tall, they got harsher sentences. Absolutely. And so that's judge by judge, that's attorney by attorney, probation officer by probation officer, but that is a big issue. And I don't know how you say that in just a little recommendation like this.
I've done some
Thanks, Rachel.
Some very quick legal research on behalf of the council here. So our statutes in Montana the Title 41, the Youth Justice Act, does not specifically have a provision providing credit for time served. What happens in practice, from my research, because I haven't been asked to work on specifically sentencing for juveniles, in my time working for Judge Nisley. However, my research suggests that judges will take into account the period of detention when determining the final disposition. But there's no statute, unlike in the adult justice statutes, that mandates that the courts provide credit for time served. So that takes me back to, this is really a recommendation that needs to come, that this is a problem that needs to be solved by the legislature. That would be my input. Sorry to cut in so quickly there, but.
No, thank you for that.
Was the statute bit?
Yeah, what was the statute that you referenced, David? Title
Well,
41?
Title 41, yes, that's the Youth Justice Court Act. And it does not, as far as I can determine, with my 5 minutes of research here, which is probably not anything you'd want to pay for, but what I'm able to determine is that there is no specific statute mandating credit for time served. And so what I was referencing earlier, the Montana Supreme Court has said the judge has no discretion in adult cases. They have to award that credit for time served exactly as mandated in the statute. So my guess would be if Title 41 had a similar statute, taking discretion away from the judge and mandating credit for time served in pre-detention facilities, that would be the way to solve this problem. But as it stands now, the judge will consider, how much time has been spent in pretrial detention in terms of where does this youth go next? How did they do in detention? What is the appropriate disposition? But they're not mandated to give them credit as it stands today. If that makes sense, I hope so.
So my recommendation to the council then, based off that, thank you, David, that's very helpful. I would recommend that we remember this for the next report, and that we move forward with courts and probation offices should consider time served during sentences for juveniles held in pretrial detention facilities, because then that gives us time over the next year to look at what we would potentially recommend related to a statutory change to the legislature.
Sure. Yeah. That sounds good. Any comments?
Good time to be working on that now.
Yeah.
Because, once they get to election season, they're gonna be busy, so maybe time to maybe find a senator that isn't up
Keeps that
for,
on a little bit.
yeah, that could sponsor the bill and get that moving in the laws.
Good point.
So we could bring this to the March meeting as one of the recommendation conversations. How does that sound?
Good.
Okay, so for the sake of time, from the two at the bottom, study and address long court processing time and invest in programs and services that support youth. Are those goes, no goes?
I feel like the third one is similar or fits into that second one a little bit. So I think it's probably a go. And I don't know why the last one wouldn't be a go. Other comments?
This is Christy.
Christy, hold on one second. Hold on, Christy, hold your thought. Jeremy?
Landon, I know that you and I discussed this at the conference about having recommendations put into place and the kid's sitting there 7 months later still. And so I would assume that that's probably something that maybe you could speak to, because I know, like I said, we just talked about this particular recommendation.
Christy, can you hang on 1 second? Go ahead, Landon.
Mm-hmm.
Did we lose Landon? Looks like he stepped away. Christy, go ahead. We'll come back to Landon. What were you going to say, Christy? Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. I'm going to piggyback right off of Jeremy and say, yes, this one, because I've worked with a lot of our juvenile detention facilities, and there are kids in Cascade County for sure that are sitting there, and they have sat in the JDC longer than their sentence time, and they haven't even been served. So I would say this is huge.
Okay, thank you, Christy. It looks like we don't have Landon, so maybe Jeremy, that's something you could follow up with him on. but it sounds like these are still important.
So, would this be a legislative study? So the Montana legislature could consider a study to address long court processing times for juveniles in detention facilities? I got Tina shaking her head yes.
Yes, and I think so, yes. Landon, Jeremy has a quick question for you.
So Landon, underneath this third, I believe that we just talked about this when we were in Minneapolis about having kids having your stuff taken care of and the kid's still sitting there 7 months later to try to get out. And so could you, if you could speak to that just quickly, whether this is something that you find needs to stay on?
I would say that it still does need to be on there because we do see long court processing times for a lot of kids, either kids that are here and have other pending charges or just sitting in a detention center for 9 months before they take a plea deal or something. And yeah, so I would say it's definitely still something that we should try to address.
I think it's something that, you know, even in the adult system is a huge issue, right? I mean, people sit in there for a long time waiting for, so, and I'm not saying that's good, bad, or indifferent, or it's bad, but for juveniles that we want to not expose to the system too much, or the longer they're exposed to the system, you know, that's probably not a great thing. And so, and I would say the same for adults, the sooner they could get through the process, I think that's a great thing for anybody. And so, yeah, I think this would be huge, and especially for a juvenile who is still being educated, who is now, I mean, do we want them educated in school or do we want them educated in Pine Hills? No offense, Landon. So I think it's a real thing for kids for sure. I would think.
Okay.
Anybody else? Okay. And the fourth one, invest in programs and services that support youth after the probation ends. I mean, again, I think we're trying to, Tina always uses that term, you know, how do you say it? School to the pipeline.
Cradle to prison pipeline.
Cradle to prison pipeline. We're trying to stop that. And so if we can save a youth when their probation ends with other support systems, then I would think that would be very important. Anybody else comment on that last one real quick?
This is Christy again. I agree. I think that one is huge. The other piece that I think we really need to also focus on is easy transition back to school, because that seems to be a huge issue. And I think Landon could definitely talk about it. So there is this huge push about when the kids leave these facilities, the schools don't want them back. And how do we do that and do a better job with that?
Well, Christy, I want to speak to that, because one of the things that we're thinking about as a center, because what we are finding is not only from juvenile probation, but also from mental health facilities, and when they're going for treatment, there is nothing that is in law that requires those facilities to connect with schools and schools to connect with those facilities. So we want to look at having some legislation that requires that, because we're just setting our kids up for failure if we don't do that. And I think it's, you know, I can't blame one or the other, but if they're required to do it, then maybe we will see more success for our kids.
I would add one thing on the fourth one. I would say to combine the two, invest in programs and provide continuing services. I think they're two different things, and they're one and the same, but I think invest in programs means putting money towards whatever it is, but then provide continuing services. I don't know, to me, they're a little different. I don't know how other people feel. I think the four things that are there, though, have probably been there for a long time for a reason. I think they're all legit, whether we have to wordsmith them or not. Does anybody agree, disagree with that? That Kayla should look and Jeremy should look at these four as being on there?
I know the fourth one we're currently working on the special education advisory panel because their schools are not taking kids back.
Yeah.
They're just taking them, they're only going, you're homebound.
Yeah.
And we're basically gonna give you an hour a day and that's what they're getting. And that's also, so that mandate is not just coming from us. That's one that other groups also are focusing on because this is a huge problem.
Yeah.
So my question is then where does the investment and where does the continuing these services come from? Is it state, county, local programs or agencies? Is it, so where are we targeting that investment in continuing the services is one question. And the second is, do we want to consider then adding as they transition back to schools? And then if we capture some of the information you provided, Tina, I think about a warm handoff. So a warm handoff for youth to, I don't know if we want to somehow incorporate those 2 points in this recommendation to say, invest in programs and services, invest and provide continuing services for programs that support youth after their probation ends, as they transition back to school, and a warm handoff to, I'm not sure what it is.
Well, so
After probation ends, because that isn't necessarily even coming out of Pine Hills, they've served their time or whatever, and then they're coming back into the community. I think it's more than just probation. I think it also needs to add detention.
So what we refer to, so working with threat assessment, we call them safety success plans. So if we could develop a system that would allow schools and probation and mental health facilities, all of those together to work on plans that transition that juvenile back to school, so that both of them have that information and they're working together.
Well said.
So to your point, Jeremy, that was well said, Tina. To your point, Jeremy, though, it would be for Kayla, it would be support youth after their detention / probation ends. Because you're saying either or, right?
Yes.
So I don't know if that's incorporable or not. Is that a word? I don't know if you want to incorporate that or not. And then does anybody want to comment on Tina? I mean, I think Tina's valid point.
So does this type of support come from, where does it come from?
Yeah, so we got to answer that question.
Yeah.
It may not be any.
I think the invest is from the legislature, and I hate to sound like, I mean, Tina's right with what she said, but we're always asking for money in schools. And to be honest, for the most part, we have enough money, but we always need money if we're going to implement programs. We also need time. But if we're going to invest, then I think that's the money that comes from the legislature to say, we're going to support, and maybe that money goes to OPI. We're going to support this curriculum to be a statewide curriculum or whatever. So I think the invest has to come from the legislature. It's also investing in time, which can come from the local school district or therapist or whatever, and then provide the continuing services. That's part of the investing because, for example, counselors, we're extremely short in schools with counselors. Some of you could speak to that better. Our YBG, Mike knows this, our YBGR program, we typically have 4 teams. A team is made up of 1 specialist and 1 therapist. And so we had 8 YBGR folks in our school. We now only have, what do we have now, Mike? 3, I think. We have 1.5. So investing in mental health or in therapy, I mean, I'm not sure what the wording is. Mike can tell us better, but supporting in those people would be huge for to continue to provide those services.
This page, are those additional recommendations?
Those are, after these will transition to those, yes.
Okay.
I wonder, is this something that it could be MVCC for Title II? Does it fit in purpose areas there? MVCC should consider investing in program and services that support youth after their probation ends. After their probation and detention ends. I don't know if that's a purpose area of Title II or not.
It actually falls into preventative. So it does fall in one of our under areas. The tough part about Title II is how it is facilitated and who can facilitate it.
What do you mean by facilitate?
In terms of who can apply for those funds, and then after you get into that situation, then you have the opportunity to maybe put this in place. But it's typically a nonprofit groups and
who are going to apply.
Yeah, and which may or may not have anything to do with the reintroduction. Does that make sense?
Could YBGR apply for those funds to train pre-service therapists?
Potentially.
So that is a way
potentially
could work, maybe.
Mr. Chair, Marissa has her hand raised.
Sorry, Marissa, go ahead.
Oh, thank you so much. So I just want to say that this is the perfect example of what Title I-D funds can be used for. And we want to use these funds for these aspects, but really the other thing is we need something that has some teeth. You know, if that's legislature or it's put into law or how that is, because even when we call schools now and say, hey, we have this kiddo coming from Pine Hills or from Great Falls, and they're coming back to your school, they won't take them. And, you know, we just don't have enough teeth to be able to make them take. They can say that they're a safety aspect, you know, a safety concern or things like that. And then what happens, and, you know, I'm speaking to the choir here, but then it's just this cycle of incarceration, and it's really hard to get them out of it if no one will give them a second chance within the public schools. But any kind of things that come up like that, Title I-D funds can be used. So that's just one funding source, and I'm happy to help in any way I can with that. But that's exactly what they're for, is that those transitional services and the warm handoff. And I'm so glad to hear you guys talking about that. But, you know, like Jeremy said, this is a problem. And, you know, the community of practice, that's what we've been talking about, is how do we keep the data on this? How do we get these kids back in school after they've left Pine Hills or Great Falls or Missoula? And how do we make sure the educational services are consistent when they get into JDC? So there's a lot to this puzzle, but I'm just so glad to hear everyone speaking about it today. And I think it's crucial.
So I have lots of thoughts, and I feel like I'm talking too much, so I apologize, but I do have lots of thoughts on this. Number one, so there's who you could partner with is OPI. You know, and the legislature could invest some money and partner with OPI to partner with school districts to kind of Marissa's point there as to where that money could go. I do have a couple quick things. I'm not sure what you mean. I just have to play the devil's advocate here as a school person. We have to take a kid. If a kid is in our district, we have we're a public school, we have to take those kids. Now we can do it. We can, we can say there's safety. The only time we don't have to take a kid is the whole gun, if they've been expelled from another district and stuff like that. So I'm not sure why some of those districts aren't taking the kid. I do understand they can reduce their day and educate them off campus and stuff. And I do have to stay as a school person, which probably runs a little different than than my position here. But there are kids in our schools that are so disruptive that it really is a dilemma, because I can completely understand. And I'm a K district, so I don't face it as much as a high school district would. And that's, you're talking about maybe a kid leaving Pine Hills and coming back to that community. And that person may have raped a student, or might have been involved in an armed robbery, or maybe something worse. And it is very disruptive to the school system, especially if you're for example, a class A, B, or C school. I can see, unfortunately, how the school would not want to get that kid back into that system, especially, I don't know, worst case scenario, they raped one of the students who's still in that school. So it is, as you said, Marissa, it's a big issue, and how to solve it, I don't know. And I certainly feel for some of the schools. I also definitely feel for the kids that are trying to, have gone and suffered some consequences, and now are trying to get their act together. And that's probably the best place that they can do it. I don't know. It is a big dilemma. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Well, so very current example, kid comes out of Pine Hills, Billings Public Schools make the determination before having a meeting that they automatically put him homebound.
Yeah.
The situation also makes it even worse, because the kid had an IEP, which makes that illegal. You cannot do that.
And that's
And so that's where I'm talking about, where we have to be able to take a look at this and go, you're bringing a kid home and going, we don't want you, and we're not even going to give you a chance because this is what our policy is.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. And that's where we need to be able to go with something like that saying, hey, this has to be provided coming in, because that kid very quickly got put back into the community, no school. Guess where he's at?
Yeah.
He's back at Pine Hills.
And especially a kid on an IEP.
Especially a kid on an IEP.
Yeah. So it is a dilemma, but I think that proves the point. It needs to stay on the list, however it gets reworked. But
So I think, since this is a topic that we want to look more into, maybe I'll recommend to the council, we bring this recommendation to the March meeting, and then also the courts and probation one, and we'll have a larger discussion about it. For today's recommendations that go into the board report, or the governor's report for tomorrow for the board, do we want to move forward with OPI should consider investment in programs and services? Is that what I was hearing? Or Title I-D funds?
the
So,
legislature or go ahead, Marissa.
no, sorry, I keep talking over you, Randy. I
No.
first of all just want to tell you how much I appreciate, Randy, when you do give the other side of it, because I think it's important to see all sides of this, but I think not to go back to this, but just there's not really any warm transitional handoffs that I see happening. So, but the other thing, it would be Title I-D funds that could be used, but it wouldn't be OPI. It would be the federal funds.
So would, Marissa, it be an opportunity for the recommendation to be that the state legislature, maybe it's not Title I-D because that is federal funds, but maybe it's a new funding mechanism that could help address. So for the recommendation, it would be, would the legislature consider putting money into an account? I'm probably using not correct words, into an account that would help address, where did it go? Invest in programs and provide continuing services to support juveniles after their probation slash or detention slash probation ends. Is that what it would be, Marissa? Because
think
wouldn't
that's-
OPI be the vehicle to disperse those funds to districts?
OPI would be the gatekeeper for sure.
Yeah.
But I think that's really brilliantly said. And I think the other thing too is, maybe we look at how the Title I-D funds are allocated. When they come into OPI, do some of them need to be differently allocated for this specific purpose?
That would be, though, more, correct me if I'm wrong, that'd be more an OPI thing, not our deal, right? I mean, that would be something OPI could maybe look at. But in terms of our recommendation to the governor, it would be invest in funds that OPI could disperse to invest in programs and provide continuing services.
Unless we made a recommendation to OPI should consider
Sure.
allocate how Title I-D funds are allocated
Allocate.
to invest in programs and continuing services that support youth and after their probation.
Do we have any say over that though, Marissa, or is that all federal?
Well, I don't have really much say over too much, but I do know that many school districts have the Title I-D funds, and those are usually the school districts where most students that come out of any kind of correctional facilities go back into. And if we could have recommendations from the legislature or from Montana Board of Crime Control or from the governor's office saying these funds need to be allocated to successful transitional services from JDCs back into, maybe they can't go back to their school of origin. But we do need to have some kind of transition plan where they can go back into a public school and be successful, because it really is, pay now or pay later. It's just this cycle of incarceration. If they can't get back in and get some kind of skill, whether it's a high school diploma, whether it's a HiSET, whether it's a welding certificate, whether, it's got to be something.
You brought up a great point. I don't mean to belabor this, but it may not be their home community, because what happens often is they go back to their home community where they originally got in trouble and they continue, or, they go down that same path. And so, we have a kid now that is from Lewistown, raped a child in Lewistown. The mother still lives in Lewistown. Hope I'm not saying too much. Wants the child to go back to Lewistown. And it's like, what is wrong with you, mother? Move to Dillon. The kid likes Dillon. The kid's successful in Dillon. The kid wants to stay in Dillon. You want to go back to Lewistown where you have this, and the kid says, I don't want to go back to that situation. I know I'm going to get in more trouble. He also has people there that aren't kind to him because of what happened, obviously. So going back to their home community, I don't think is always the best thing. So if there was an avenue of help and support them, whether it's through Youth Challenge or Anaconda Job Corps or something like that, I think that would be great.
So I'll put, for the recommendation, kind of rounding this out, I'll put the state should invest Title I-D funds in programs and continuing services that support youth after their probation and detention ends. That gets us a draft recommendation. In March, we can come back and maybe continue the conversation to figure out how we want to change that. Who should do what when.
Perfect.
Does that sound good?
I have one more thing, and then I'm sorry, and then I'll move on. But I think another really important thing is that the community of practice that Jeremy and Christy and myself are on, our main focus is how we can transition these students back into a successful education program. And if so, there's any way that we could write in there that these Title I-D funds could be allocated towards the community of practice to build these data systems. We really don't even know where these kids go at sometimes. And these transitional services, those kind of community of practices are so crucial to building these plans. So thank you so much for listening today and putting that in. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for your input. Anybody else before we move on? Okay, so at least we have 4, but do we need to look at these now?
Yeah, so we'll move on. We won't look at the other past recommendations. We'll move on to Jeremy where he can do the new recommendations. But this is just an example of this is great conversation and discussion on forming recommendations that are actionable. And I really appreciate everyone's comments and participation in it. It means a lot. Thank you.
Jamie?
Okay, so as we've gone through the year, we've talked about a lot of different things. And one of the things that I think we're basically based on the recommendations where we looked at, but these are the things that have come up. So this is just something that kind of got put together. So number one, on these, if you go, it's actually in your folder. It is basically the last page.
Last 2 pages.
So expand prevention and diversion pathways. So basically looking at sustaining and growing funding for mentoring, after school programs, truancy reduction, and restorative justice initiatives. Some of this with that set aside grant money that's coming in for after school programming. It falls under those areas. So, but we're looking to prioritize diversion at the earliest contact points to reduce that unnecessary corporal system involvement. And what we do know is if kids don't touch the system at all, chances go forward that they probably aren't going to continue. Do we have anything based on that?
Could we put sustain and grow funding for mentoring after school programs, threat assessment? Because I think there's a direct tie between we have kids making threats, and if it's not handled, if they don't provide that support, they go down that road of violence. That if we could help support schools in doing adequate threat assessment, that maybe we can stop that from happening. So I think that's in addition to the after school programs and truancy reduction. Because I know, and OPI is actually working on an attendance project with our center because we have so many schools that kids are having attendance problems. And then if they're not at school, what are they doing?
Anything else on that or any thoughts about that?
I think that's good. I mean, I think it's all good, and I think throwing in the threat assessment makes sense. Anybody else out there comment on that? Marissa, your hand's not up. That's your logo in the background.
Oh, I finally put my hand down, so it's good.
And I was just going to add that I do, the more we can add after school programs to it, they're a great place and a great resource. So I'd love to encourage that.
Okay.
What's the recommendation?
I think the recommendation is basically as written in the with the exception of adding the threat assessment. So sustain and grow funding for mentoring after school programming, truancy reduction, threat assessments, and restorative justice initiatives.
Who's growing the funding? Here.
I think this is something that's probably legislative.
Yeah.
But we are also, speaking to the governor, and he's in charge of giving a recommended budget. And so we're asking him to make those considerations in his recommendations to the legislature.
Yeah.
Anything else to that piece? Do we need to change the? Yes, sir.
What's the second bullet? Is that part of that or?
It's just, it's a reinforcement.
Yeah.
Of the previous thing saying, hey, that we need to prioritize these pathways and these things in place. So that as it was put earlier by Marissa, you pay now or you pay later.
Yeah. So does everybody think that should be a recommendation? Or I should say, does anybody think it shouldn't be? Okay, so again, I think it's on the list for now, but I wonder if later we need to prioritize. I don't know.
Yeah, but absolutely. Basically what was put together, guys, is just based off what we talked about through the year.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, for clarification, it's sustain and grow funding for mentoring, after school programs. Do we add in?
Add threat assessment and then truancy reduction and restorative justice initiatives.
So is it after school programs, threat assessments?
Yeah, how would you, it's threat
Probably
assessment
School
support,
threat assessment support, yeah.
school threat assessment support. Because somebody's not going to really know what threat assessment just thrown in there means.
And that's in addition to the after school program. So after school
Correct.
Yes.
programs and then school threat assessment support.
Yep.
Okay.
And then truancy reduction and restorative justice.
Okay. The next one.
Okay.
Because you're in the, you don't, okay. Oh.
Establish regional youth assessment centers. So develop regional assessment centers as front-end hubs for screening, triage, and service referrals.
Can I ask more questions around this? Like, where regionally, what regions are you gonna use? And how do those kids get referred to these regional assessment centers?
So as it sets up, as they're being done elsewhere, that can come from school or community, and they can then be sent to these assessment centers to get these pieces in place prior to adjudication. Because right now what happens is for kids to get a lot of these service and behavioral health screenings, the risk or needs assessment, family engagement services, or alternatives to detention. What happens right now is you have to be put into the system to get these pieces. And so underneath these assessment centers, prior to, let's say, you made some threats. Right. Okay, and so school goes, wait a second. So we're going to send them over to these assessment centers. And in Idaho, for instance, which would be something we were looking at, we probably base it. They have 11 different centers throughout the state. And they also use telemed or telehealth, and they use these different pieces to align them to the, because obviously you're in Eastern Montana. If you need to get mental health counseling, good luck.
So how does this, I mean, my worry is if we have these regional centers, so kids are making threats. So for example, I'm working with a school where a second grader has made a number of threats. If they then take that child out, send them to a center to have these assessments, but they're already doing assessments at the school. So how does that differ, and why would we want to move the kid out of the school to an assessment center?
Well, the assessment center isn't a place where we move you to.
Okay.
Assessment center is a place where they go, hey, we need some more information on this for this kid. So they then go through and they get sent through a mental health counselor that does the assessments, or Minnesota trained, or what have you. Because right now, if a lot of schools don't have the ability to do that, or they don't do that, or so rather than have
by law to do that.
But
I understand what you're saying.
But like for us, if we have a kid that makes a threat, we make them go outside and get a favorable psych eval or threat assessment or risk assessment before we'll have them come back to school. We could do that through you, correct?
No, you would do that through your school psychologist or however
Yeah.
your process.
So we don't want to use our school site because we don't want to put her, we don't want to, you know, her say the kid's fine and then something in it. So we put it on some, you know, on an outside service. I think that's what Jeremy's getting at. So I love it in the sense, and couldn't it fall under your threat assessment? Couldn't it fall under when a kid makes a threat? Because we have very few, we used to have lots of school psychs. We used to have
Right.
Child psychiatrist here in Helena and other places. There's nobody that we can't even do a school psych anymore because nobody will do it. Or if they do it, they're like 3 months. I think there's one guy in Bozeman. It's like 3 months out. We don't want the kid out of school for 3 months. So we've lowered our standards to a risk assessment, but we'll take a risk assessment, which we can do much quicker, or people can do much quicker. Isn't that what you're saying? Is we would then have an opportunity to, and it's not send the kid there. It's more telehealth or whatever, right?
So basically, you're looking at status, number one. You're looking at status offenses. So what assessment centers basically do is rather than have them go into probation, go in to be able to get some of these services that they need put into place, or find out if they need those services, they're able to go through the assessment rather than having to go through the court system to be able to put these things in place. And so more than likely, when you're looking at these regional assessment centers, your larger towns are all going to would potentially have these in place. So Missoula would have one. So the schools then could go, we have this kid, he's missed 15 days of school. That is something that they can't arrest him for. They can't, but what they would do at that point then would then ask that this kid then go through these assessment centers to look at what services potentially they might need. And then they could get some of those services throughout the community to help put that in place, or it could be recognized that this kid needs this service. Right now, that doesn't happen. And the other thing about the assessment centers is it takes a large amount off of juvenile probation's plate. Because when you're in there and you've got 120 kids on your caseload, and 95% of them are taking up your time, but they're status offenses. And so the kids who really need what that probation officer has, to offer, all of his time is getting taken up, or her time is getting taken up with this stuff over here, which they could simply route them over to the assessment centers to find out what they need.
So I think that's great. I think this has to be very clearly outlined.
Sure.
I mean, because I think there will be schools who will be like, just send them, instead of doing their process and what they're supposed to be doing in the schools. I think it just has to be very thoughtfully lined out on when a child is referred to one of these assessment centers.
It's status offense, period.
But do schools understand what that means?
Well, that would have, your SRO would be part of that.
But we only have 50 SROs in the state. So we have schools in Missoula County that don't have SROs.
Sure.
So that's where I'm saying, for me, just making sure that is very clearly lined out why a child would go to this assessment center versus the school doing their own threat assessment and providing those services and doing those wraparound in the school.
I wonder if, hearing the conversation, my recommendation would be that maybe this is something that we work on for the next year. We don't do a recommendation right now. And then and I apologize, I don't have the history as to what you guys have talked about regarding assessment centers, but we could consider bringing in a speaker to one of the meetings, 15, 20 minutes or something, to share about an assessment center in another state. So we could come up with a plan on how we want to address this topic, but don't do a recommendation right now. Do we have any thoughts or comments about that?
My thought is, I really like this idea. I know what Tina's saying, and we do, once we get that assessment back, we follow those recommendations. But we don't have a lot of opportunities. But I think we should hold the thought and take a break. I'm sure people online want to grab a bite to eat or something like that. Or go to the bathroom. So let's take a break. But I think I think that's a good point, Kayla. We can do that. But I also, if somebody else has thoughts on this, I think let's share them after a break. I think, Tina, you have a good point about how's it going to be rolled out. But I really do think there's a need for it because, and I do think there's a way it can be rolled out that is very clear to administrators or counselors or whoever's going to implement it. But as you know, Tina, you're right. Now, a lot of people are doing the threat assessment, right? It is now law and it is a nightmare. This actually could really, I think, help a lot of schools. Now, I don't know what regions and all that mean. And Jeremy might have to explain that more, like Kayla's saying, we could dive into it deeper. But let's take a break. And if anyone has any thoughts on this, how long do we want to break for? Are we eating lunch here or how are we doing this?
You guys are going for lunch today.
We can,
Okay.
we can order lunch.
So
So-
you I'll have to order it, I'll have to get here.
Yeah, so
So we're fine. I mean, I don't know about Tina and George, but I'm fine. We can work through or we can, what do you guys want to do? George and
Yeah, what you going to do?
Tina, what do you want to do?
Oh, that's not just the Jeremy strike. Finance.
We have, once we get through these, we have a few more of these, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more, 3 or 4 or 5 more of these. Then we have, financial report, which usually doesn't take very long. Jeremy, YJC Youth Engagement. Public comment, I'm not sure we have anybody there. And then just a little bit of other business. What do we have? Maybe another hour?
maybe, yeah. So we could take a 5-minute break. Would you guys like Jimmy John sandwiches?
Yeah,
Sure.
that would be great.
Okay, we'll order lunch.
It'll be by the time you're ready to leave.
Well, and that'll be okay too.
They're freaky.
The freaky
Um,
fast.
Should
Should we do 10 minutes?
Yeah, let's online, it is 12:30, right at 12:30. Let's meet back here at 12:40. So we'll adjourn until 12:40. At 12:30. Does that work? All right.
So I don't disagree. I just,
Coming back into order at 12:47. I'm sorry, we're a little late here at this end.
yeah. No, I definitely go.
Who do we still have online with us? Or who do we have online?
Everybody's gone.
That's what the first was.
Let me see here.
I see Rachel, I see Megan. Thank you guys.
I don't know where Mike's at. Mike's picture's up.
I see David.
I don't know where Mike's at.
All right, can you guys all hear us? Perfect. I see Marissa. So we'll go ahead and pick back up. Thank you guys for bearing with us and thank you for getting back on. Thank you for, sorry, we're a little bit late getting on. We'll blame it on Jeremy.
Sure. Okay.
Okay, we're gonna pick back up with where we were at, Jeremy. We talked about number 1 and we're gonna consider that. I think number 2, I don't want to leave that. I think Kayla said we're going to kind of keep investigating it, but I feel like maybe some other people wanted to chime in real quick on number 2. Does anybody want to chime in on number 2? I'll go ahead and start the conversation real quick. I think it's a great idea, Jeremy. I really, we talked to Tina a little bit here off the record. And just talked about kind of the need for it. Tina has some really valid points. I think Jeremy will take under advisement. And I think, Jeremy, if you want to keep working on it, as a school person who has a difficult time finding resources for risk assessments, I think it would be good. And I think it's important that you clarify that it doesn't mean it's the regional youth assessment center doesn't really mean that people from Dillon would have to go to Billings or people from Ekalaka wouldn't have to go to Glendive. It could be a teletherapy, telehealth, telemedicine, right? So anybody have any comments about it before we move on? Okay, anything else, Jeremy, with that one before you move on that you want to point out?
Not really. Like I said, you guys, if you look at the packet, you can look at the kind of the write-up on it. But this is the stuff that we had discussed before. Kayla brought up that, you know, potentially we could reach out to Idaho, we could reach out to Utah, Colorado, maybe get a speaker come in, give us a little better understanding of what it is they do, how they do it. So that when we went forward with a recommendation, we actually would have a little better idea of how this could potentially be implemented.
Well, I want to thank you, Jeremy. I know I think you've put a lot of time and effort into researching this. How many states do this now? Do you know that?
In the 11 Western states, I believe there are 5 that are doing it right now. That would be directly applicable to us.
Mostly
because
rural.
Very rural.
Yeah.
Several large population centers, but for the most part,
The Dakotas, Wyoming.
miles and miles of,
Yeah.
you know, Idaho, 90% of their population is in Boise,
Yeah.
you know, and so, well, probably not 90, but
Good
a
percent.
good percentage. So they had to figure out how they covered that eastern side of the state and all the way north where the population centers are kind of built like we are.
Yeah.
And so and like I said, Utah is doing it, which is also, they have that huge population center and then
Yeah.
spread out for miles. That 100-mile corridor down there contains 80% of the people in the state.
Yeah.
So we could look at over the next, couple meetings, have a couple states come in, take a little bit of time in the meeting, have the speaker give an opportunity for the council to ask questions, and then continue the conversation.
Sure.
What do you think?
Sure. And we can get the national assessment. There's actually a board that's a national that's what they, or an organization, that's what they do. They actually help states implement the assessment center idea.
Okay. Perfect. Okay. What about number 3? Expand behavioral health supports.
So this gets us into that same spot because we are so rural that, especially in eastern Montana, finding out a way to expand that support. So that's that telehealth piece. So the recommendation would be that probably more funding was put towards that allows for our rural areas to actually access counseling, crisis stabilization, and then really that family preservation service, which is huge, because no matter how much good work happens at Mike's facility, if they come home and nothing has changed at home, all that work is for naught.
Yeah.
And so looking at put that into place, and not just rural, but really in our tribal areas. It's a huge problem in our tribal areas. Mm-hmm. So basically looking to integrate behavioral health providers, and that would also go into that, potentially into that assessment center piece.
Yeah, for sure.
To ensure timely interventions. Because right now, if it takes you 3 months to get a kid in to see a therapist, damage is done.
Yep. Yeah, it has to be timely. George, you got any insight, or Megan, with the reservations? I'm sure you concur.
I think just what you point out, when they leave and then come back, it's, the line I use is like, they like treatment so much to keep going back. But there's structure,
stability.
There's stability, meal times, even in jail, and I guess, you don't get that in some homes. You don't get, food is not secure either, so.
Mm-hmm.
A comment on the increased access to counseling, crisis stabilization, and family preservation services, particularly in rural and tribal communities. So is if we were to create a recommendation from this, is it targeting the telehealth side of things? Is that what the intent is, or?
I think that's the idea behind it, because the access to these services, especially in rural communities, is totally lacking. And so the only way that this can happen for a lot of those things is it has to be convenient and readily available, and that does not happen unless you look at that telehealth or look at those different look at a different way to ensure access.
I definitely agree with this. I also believe that there are a number of organizations that are working on this as well. So how do we collaborate with them? Because our organization does a mental health for very rural schools as well. But yeah, I think everybody's wanting this, but as Randy knows, it's really hard to find therapists. So
yeah, I know at Department of Justice, the Sexual Assault Response Network, they have a committee that's looking at telehealth for forensic examinations. So there is a lot of spotlight on telemedicine, telehealth, teleservices. So I guess I would just be, instead of just saying we need, this legislature to provide more funding for these things, I'm wondering if we should wait and can have more conversation or learn more about what's being done by partners across the state before we sign on to a recommendation. Just because I don't know what's being done already, or what resources are being put to what organizations or nonprofits or whatever it is, before we provide a recommendation. I don't know, just thought.
Do you know, Tina, who some of those other, like who you have?
yes. So like
who
the
are some of those
University of
others?
Montana, their counseling department
Yeah,
received a grant, I think last year, that is working on expanding the network of behavioral health.
obviously YBGR.
YBGR.
So then you're talking about Western Montana
Yeah.
Mental
Yeah.
Health, you're talking about YDI, which YDI Yellowstone, the same thing now, where Montana Western Health are now a thing together.
And there's some private now.
Yeah.
Private.
MSU is also working on rural health to get therapists and people out into rural areas.
So do we look at yeah, that's Mike.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's also a big part of the 872 Commission and the recommendations out of that. And then there's a federal improving rural health things. My thought is, I completely support this, particularly since it's the work that we do, that it's in there. But I think Caleb might have been getting at some of this stuff. We're the Youth Justice Council, juvenile justice, not behavioral health experts. We've got folks on the field, on the commission that have some expertise in that. But I wonder if our role is not more to support those efforts and to increase access for kids involved in the juvenile justice system to them on the prevention side and the reintegration, rather than being directly involved. So I think that the theory is there. We want those things expanded. But I'm wondering if we're getting outside of our specific lane. Our goal would be to expand them for kids in the juvenile justice system. Again,
Okay, good
the
point.
rising
Good points,
tide
Mike.
raises all boats, but I don't want to get outside of our role. Jeremy and I have had some of these conversations, like that. I mentioned the project that Children's Mental Health Bureau is going on and expanding home supports. It would fit in perfectly into this. And Tom Biltine from probation is working as part of that, because there are barriers for juvenile justice kids to get into those, not just because of their criminal history, but because a charge is not medical necessity. right? They're two different worlds and two different languages. So anyways, just looking into how do we support those things and how do we work together with those that do that rather than us driving it all together. I think there's folks out there that are better situated. Again, the 872 Commission has a big part specifically in this that I think we should support and be involved in and make sure the juvenile justice kids are considered as a part of that. They oftentimes do get left out.
Okay, good points, Mike. You were going to say something first, Jeremy, and then respond to what Mike's saying. What were you going to say first?
Well, I agree with Mike to a point. Because part of our purveyance is prevention. And so if we can find a way to work within the system that's already in place, that we help, because like I said, that expand behavioral support also falls back in that assessment center idea that we're trying to get them on the front end before they touch the juvenile justice system.
Sure.
And that's where this would fall into play more for us is the preventative piece on the front end.
So would you say though, based on Kayla's comments, Mike's comments, should we, and it would fit in number 2 for sure, because that is what you would be doing. You'd be expanding those services. But would you say, let's wait on number 3 as far as it going to the governor?
Well, I would say that it could probably just roll into 2 and
yeah,
then we would look at how that falls into play with that as we move forward.
The other recommendation that we could do is for the council. So we could provide a recommendation in a report to say that the Youth Justice Advisory Council should collaborate with stakeholders should learn let me think how to word this. YJC should learn about what services or programs or work is being done to increase access to counseling, crisis stabilization, and family services, particularly in rural tribal communities, as it relates to youth in the juvenile justice system. So that gives the council a goal potentially over the next year to maybe hear from partners in the field, have someone come in 15 minutes and talk about what's going on and what they're doing and how they're investing in these resources. And it kind of continues the conversation, but it gives us a goal over the next year. If the council wanted to do something like that, to still be part of it, but learn, and then that allows us to be able to figure out ways to apply it to youth in the system.
And we do have lots of examples of people that are already doing that. All those people you and Jeremy mentioned, Tina. Everybody good with that? Jeremy, good with that?
Mike, do you have, what do you think about that? If we gave I gave a recommendation to the council as sort of a goal to just continuing to learn a little bit more about this and how it relates to the youth in our system.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What did Mike say? Yeah. What did you say, Mike?
Yeah.
Agree. Okay. All right. Number 4, Jeremy.
So this is probably less of a recommendation to the governor, as more to our council, is provide advance equity and reduce racial and ethnic disparities, which we know is a buzzwords right now. But we have not provided any training or technical assistance for our local jurisdictions or tribal partners in the last 2 years. And whether that's something that we look to add into a full formal training, or something that we would do in a conference or something in that piece. But that's something we need to take a look at, because what federally they're asking, what have you done in this area? Well, that happened right before I came. It's the last time that there was a training for that.
And I think that's a very valid point, because I think that is a big, what would it not push, a big part of, yeah, it's a big part of the YJC. So I don't know, I guess that's something for you and Kayla to think about and consider. And I guess if anyone on the council has ideas, say them now. But for me, I guess it's Kayla and Jeremy saying, you know, this is how we can fulfill this, or this is what we want to do, and I guess letting us know or whatever. But I do know that is a big.
Yeah, it's part of our training. That's something that we have to do.
Yeah.
To go along with that, and Gina and I talked about before, the assessment centers you'll see keep popping up as we go through these recommendations. And but one of the problems that we have within our juvenile justice is there is nothing standardized, just like with our schools. And so that's part of the thing we run into with our red disparities is that when we get our documentation back, there is absolutely no consistency that goes with that. So when you're trying to put stuff together, it's a struggle. So I don't know if that's a standalone thing, but I would love to see that something that came out of the governor's office that said that we look to standardize how we do any of these pieces. So when we come back, when we have data, we're not inferring from it. It actually tells us this is what we've got. So I don't know how that goes into a recommendation piece. Like I said, it falls under red, but it's an issue that we haven't. We talked about that. We talked about the JDDRS and JCAT systems, and that there is no continuity.
Any comments on that? And we apologize for the opening of chips and sandwiches. I'm sure that's probably, you guys can probably hear that. We'll try to be real quiet. But anybody have any comments online for Jeremy or Kayla in terms of, I'm not sure how to, I don't know if it's a recommendation, but it's something we have to do, right?
Yeah, it's something that we need to bring forward to, because the next piece has to support culturally grounded programming to reduce disparities in detention and commitment outcomes, which is another problem that we have with our red. Our Native population is much higher represented than our per capita numbers should suggest, based on when you compare it to our Caucasian population.
So this is Kayla. I guess I think about it this way. So if we as a council, as a board, we're tasked with this job of, we're putting together these recommendations. We're putting together a report to the governor's office and legislature that gives recommendations, but also gives how the state is complying with these core requirements of the Juvenile Justice and Delinquency and Prevention Act, right? And so part of that is that red data as a core requirement, correct? Okay, so I don't know how over the last years how involved and how informed the council is about the data that goes into that supports the governor's report related to the red data, and how that's being done. So I think in my conversations with Priscilla and Jeremy, it's complicated because the different systems that are used, we're pulling data from the the youth at the court administrator's office, youth report card. So I think it would be helpful for future recommendations. And again, maybe this is part of a work plan for the council over the next year, is to understand how what data we're using to produce a report, and then what gaps we see when it comes to how we're gathering that data, because we don't have a lot of options. We're really, Jeremy's doing a nice job of pulling together some of the data from Title II, some data from a kind of an archaic system that we have, youth court data. So I think it would be to inform the council about this, because over the next year, Jeremy could go through some processes of what we're doing to produce the data that we have on RED, but that I think will help produce recommendations moving forward, because it is a challenge and a barrier to produce or to get data within the governor's report, because we just don't have a lot of access to youth data. So I think we need to go over it as a council. That way you guys are more informed about what is going into the report, what we have access to, and what we're utilizing. Because for me as a new person, and learning the different systems that we have access to and the youth court data, it doesn't all work well together. And so if we could go through that as a council, I think it would be worthwhile, because then we could have some really actionable recommendations related to data. So I would recommend that we look at putting this on future agendas and talking through what we're doing with RED data, how we're getting it, and then how it's working its way, what you're doing to get it in a way that makes sense for the governor's report, because that's really it's an important part of the report. Is one thought.
And that just really folds into the next one. The next recommended, or the brought forward, is strengthen the data infrastructure and transparency.
Yep.
So we have a Justice Data Warehouse, which is an amazing tool that we right now can't put youth data into. And so I guess what that would be something that could potentially be a recommendation, that funding was put aside, that could somehow invest in a statewide juvenile justice data dashboard, that we actually had actionable numbers.
I think that would be huge. We need the data to drive decisions. And that's always been an issue, is it's always spotty.
But that falls right back into what we were talking about, right, with Kayla, where this is where we're at. But
yeah,
this is a situation that is a problem come time to send this stuff off to the feds, because
or to apply for grants, or sometimes you get some reservations, you get data, some you don't. Sheriff's office, you get some you don't.
And there's no continuity between how they intake not just a kid, intake anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And so the other piece of that recommendation would be that statewide, that there was a tool that was used by consistently used by everybody.
I think even judges would, Any comments on that? Does that sound good? Does that make sense?
That makes
I think
sense
it's
to me. I'll just say, the RED committee did start meeting over these past few months. So we have an upcoming meeting, it looks like in 2 weeks. But yeah, that's definitely been the first thing we've talked about, was where do we find this information and gather it. So makes a lot of sense.
Thank you. Anyone else? I think it's a worthwhile recommendation. I think it's always been an issue. Where do we get the data?
And that's something that could come out of the governor's office and it could be actionable and fairly simply if it was just mandated. And the last one is one that's come up over and over throughout the different recommendations over the years, that evidence-based practices and evaluation. And that, like I said, you'll see most of that comes back and you're looking at a lot of this all feedback into that assessment center. So that's something that could be put on hold as we look at and determine if that's something that we want to do going forward, or how we would recommend that going forward.
Any thoughts on that? I mean, I don't know if it matters about the assessment center piece. I think the Title II funded programs, those are the ones that we fund, right? I think we have talked a lot about a follow-up or the evaluation, or, you know. I don't know about the whole partner with universities and research centers. I mean, obviously they would have to want to be a part of that,
and that's where our youth coordinator actually comes from, the University of Montana. Does that report for the youth court system. So they compile that data and they're already doing some of it. They send it over to them. But even for them, it's hard because there is no uniform
assessor system.
Well, and data speaks. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Data speaks. And the more that we have data to back up what we're funding, I think it becomes more powerful. And the cost savings, when you have a cost savings tied to something, and you can go back to the legislature and say, gosh, if we put in money here in a child's life and we save X number of dollars down here, it's really hard to argue against when you're saving money.
Yeah. The only problem is it's hard. The causation is hard to prove. And that's what you get when you go and you go, you know what, if corrections is getting $750 million and we put $10 million on the front end and potentially this is going to save you $300 million, that seems like a good idea, right? But then you come into the argument and going, well, is this what caused us to happen? And if you ask me, I'm going to say, yes, absolutely. That's what's going on. But this is some of the stuff that came out of the meetings when we were in Minneapolis, where they were talking about that piece, is that how do you this to this is tough to prove.
Well, that's why you get the universities and research centers who do this full time and know how to set it up.
And I'm on, like I said, I know I'm preaching to the choir. I mean, I know I am, because we know that we know inherently if you do this on the front end, there's going to be less on the back end.
But then the problem is the prisons keep asking for more money too. They're like, well, why aren't we saving money, right? So, yeah, it is hard to show, but it makes sense. So, do we want that as a recommendation or not?
I guess need some clarification. So for the Title II funded programs through NBCC, right? So if we fund them as a program, then they're completing performance evaluations. They're doing grant employees, they're doing X, Y, Z. So is it something that we can just look at internally at what we're asking of them already to be a sub-grantee? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. At some level, so here, for instance, you have a program in Hamilton. And they are using this stuff, and they come back and what we could do is internally tighten up and say, this is what we need reported on this to show this piece. Right now, they come back and go, this is what we're doing. And we go, okay. Because it's based off of their programming. And so the numbers may say that we serve 300 kids. And over this 10-week period, we didn't have any recidivism. That doesn't really give you actionable data. And so yeah, I suppose we could internally try to tighten that piece up.
Make that be a requirement of them receiving the funding, that they gotta have some sort of a assessment or evaluation.
Well, it's not just under Title II. You want to promote evidence-based anyway, because that's the only place where you get that actionable information out of the backside.
If NBCC is already prioritizing, or within our plans, within our funding mechanisms, evidence-based practices, programs that are using evidence-based practice and evaluation, I don't think we need to have a recommendation. But if what I'm understanding from this require all Title II funded programs, including assessment centers, to incorporate evaluation and continuous and quality improvement, if there's something internally that we can do in NBCC to ask to revise our questions that we're asking, or improve the questions that we're asking, or the objectives we're asking of our grantees, to provide us more information or additional information, or just different information about the work they're doing and how the funds are being utilized, we can look at that. But I don't know if that's targeting what this is saying.
Yeah. Title II tells them exactly what it is that they have to report, but that isn't necessarily enough. What we're looking to see that proves that piece, but because it's mandated and says this is all that we have to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So could we ask more though?
I don't know.
So I would recommend we look into it. We look at Title II, talk to Criselda, come together and figure out what we're asking now. And then if there's something we could do different or revise what we're asking to get more, to get what the council is looking for. And if that's how they're doing evaluation or continuous quality improvement. Maybe that's an objective that we look at in the future for future opportunities that come out from us that we're asking those questions, but don't do a recommendation or endorsement.
So our recommendations to review are the 4 that we originally talked about, and then number 1 would be 5. Number 2, we're waiting on. 3, we're going to wrap into 2. Somehow Jeremy is. 4 is not really a recommendation. That's more just something we need to be aware of. So we have
the recommendation to the council, not a recommendation to the governor.
Right. That we need. Okay. And then 5 was a yes, and 6 we're waiting on. So that would be 6 recommendations at this point. And I think the question is that enough? Should there be more, or is that too much? Correct?
I don't think quantity matters. I think as long as we're looking at the quality of the recommendations, I would, if it pleases chair, I can go over what I have, just read through what we have, and then I it's not an action item, but we can maybe take an informal vote
Okay.
or kind of a thumbs
Let's
up
do that.
agreement as to how to move forward with putting these into the board report. Well, it is an action committee.
Yeah, it is. It does say.
It has to go to what the board is.
So I could read through the recommendations that we tentatively agreed on, and then
You have to vote on.
if we want to move.
Yeah.
forward.
Everybody good with that? Okay.
Okay.
Taylor.
So let's start at the beginning with the old recommendations that have come up in various years. So let me get so it would be for number one, Montana Public Schools should encourage the use of programs in school which help youth build character, handle difficult emotions, and solve real-world problems. Then we have second, courts and probation offices should consider time served during sentencing for juveniles held in pretrial detention facilities. We will bring this one, we'll add it as a recommendation, but we'll bring it to the March meeting to consider looking at the statutory language that refers to time served, it not being mandatory for youth. The third, the Montana legislature should consider a study to address long court processing times for juveniles in detention facilities. And the fourth, Title I-D fund, or excuse me, the state should invest Title I-D funds in programs and continuing services that support youth after their probation and detention period ends.
Is there anything in that one? Should there be anything in that one about OPI? I thought
That's the title of the.
okay. Do we need to clarify that though for the governor and the folks that are reading that report? Do they all know? I'm not sure they're gonna all know that is OPI. Should it be the title and then parentheses OPI? I don't know.
You know, we could put in there OPI will help to facilitate the allocation of these funds or continue to help facilitate the allocation of these funds. But that sounds really good. You guys are amazing.
Yeah, how do we put that in that, Marissa, how do people know that's title? How do people know that's OPI funds? In a succinct, quick way.
We're only the gatekeeper for those funds, though. Those come from the U.S. Department of Ed through us, and then we allocate them to the districts.
No, I know that. I'm just thinking if I'm reading that report and I'm a legislature that doesn't really know, I just want to, and maybe it's not important. I don't know, but
maybe just put OPI as the gatekeeper
somewhere in there.
So I would recommend, based off conversation, the state should collaborate with OPI
yes
to invest Title I-D funds in programs and continuing services that support youth after their probation and detention ends.
Perfect.
Perfect. Yay. That's awesome. Thank you so much. Yes.
Because I'm afraid they'd read it and think that was NBCC's funds, or I don't know.
Jeremy's going to be helping me with it, though. He just doesn't know it yet.
Okay, so those are our past recommendations. Moving to new recommendations. The state should sustain and grow funding for mentoring, after-school programs, school threat assessment support, truancy reduction, and restorative justice initiatives.
Tina, is that the right way to say that? School threat assessment support, right? Is, yeah.
The next kind of a build on item 3 on expand behavioral health supports. We have the YJAC should learn how diverse stakeholders are increasing access to counseling, crisis stabilization, and family preservation services, particularly in rural and tribal communities, as it relates to youth involved in the juvenile justice system.
I think that's great, but I thought we were gonna roll that into 2 and therefore not deal with it yet. No, I think that's great though.
Okay.
Leave it, okay.
And then I do not have the data one.
So how would you word that, Jeremy?
The state should invest in a statewide juvenile data dashboard in conjunction to the juvenile or the data warehouse. How to put that? I don't know.
One thought has the council heard about this criminal justice data warehouse? Do you know what's going on with it? Been informed?
Exactly.
Okay. I would recommend waiting on the recommendation and then Janice and I can come in at a meeting and talk about what's happened and how we've gotten to this point with the criminal justice data warehouse. It's something that we report on, mainly I say we, but Janice reports on to the Law and Justice Interim Committee, the Criminal Justice Oversight Council, and Section D routinely. It's the last few legislative sessions has been a hot topic. So I think if we could get to a point to get the council updated, we may know more about how youth data should, maybe, whatever that looks like with the JDW. So maybe wait on a recommendation, have Janice come in with the Statistical Analysis Center, and let's talk about JDW and inform the council about where we're at and what's going on legislatively.
Makes sense. Anybody else? Everybody good with that? Yeah. Okay. So how many do we have total then? We have the 4, 5, 6 total? 7. No, 6 total now that we're going to recommend.
What did we talk about? Streamlining the documentation piece. Was that when we were talking about that? Was within the data infrastructure? Because I would love to see us put a recommendation forward to discuss the consistency of the paperwork across
all the different agencies.
Across at least our juvenile probation,
right,
and detention and courts.
I think we did talk about it under this one. Yeah. But there's 6 then, right?
Sure.
So I think that would be part of this as we learn more about it and then potentially do something with it down the road.
I almost consider a different recommendation. So not involving JDW.
Yeah.
It's a different recommendation as to how, from what I understand, different touch points on a youth involved in the juvenile justice system, how that data is being collected from them, on what form, whatever that may be, that it's different across different agencies.
There's no consistency.
So that's a different recommendation to me than the one that we would consider for JDW.
So not one for this.
Not one for this, and we have something different than this. But if we could get that continuity, it would make this more actionable.
And I just don't know enough about what that data collection looks like when they do, the people, whoever it is coming in contact with the youth. I don't know if it's the detention officer, if it's whatever it is, probation. I don't know enough about what those forms look like, what data they're collecting, how it differs between the 56 counties.
It's just like we talked about within the school districts. We do it this way, and you do it this way, and you do it this way, and you do it this way. And so that would actually be probably an actionable item that says there's going to be a standard set of paperwork based on when kids come into the system.
And this council, just so you two know, and Mike, you might remember this, and I doubt anybody else was involved then, but years ago, we did that in this council, or we tried this. Well, Criselda would remember. Is Criselda on?
She should be, yes.
Criselda would know this. So years ago, Mark?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mark was a big part of this too. We really tried to get the juvenile probation officers. I think, Criselda, is that where it was directed? I think was the the point of contact or the sheriff's office or something. We really tried to get that. And it comes back to, yeah, everybody does it their own way. And sheriffs are elected. And so this sheriff works really well with you. And then next year there's a new sheriff elected and they're not. So it's really difficult to get that consistent data. And it's to your point, Jeremy, and Tina, yeah, schools, we have 413 school districts or whatever in the state of Montana, and there's probably 205 different ways of how they collect the data or whatever. So yeah, good luck. That's going to be tough. But
well, the thing about it is the only way that you make changes is you got to be willing to make changes.
Yeah. Exactly. But we did try that a long time ago. So, and there was some success with it. In fact, Criselda, I don't know, or Jeremy, you might know that some of that data is probably still being collected at some point. I don't know where it's going. I don't know what they're doing with it. Or maybe it's not being collected anymore. I don't know. But there was a real concerted effort, which originated with this council, to collect that data. And I know Mark was a big part of it. And so he would have some knowledge of it. But okay, Criselda, go ahead.
I was gonna say, Randy, it's kind of like you were saying, sheriffs move along, there's new sheriffs, school districts, you lose superintendents, you gain new ones, principals, and same thing with our office, we lose staff. And there's nothing consistent that is being tracked, and and maybe Kayla's onto something where she wants to track a lot of these recommendations. What are the outcomes so that we can track them? But again, Mark was here for a lot of years and then he's gone. He was working with Rachel. Rachel's gone. And so now Jeremy's been here a little over a year. And it feels like we're starting new again, and we shouldn't be. And so we're at this point of what have we done, and doing some research on our end, like going back 3, 4, 10 years, if there's that data in our records in our S drive, and see where it goes from here. So anyways, that's the only comment I have.
Yeah, well articulated. Good job. All right, Kayla, where are we at?
So
we have 6.
We have the 6 recommendations. And then Jeremy, Criselda, and I can work on a YJC work plan maybe for the next year, and incorporate in each meeting some of these things that we've talked about that we want to dig down into and learn a little bit more about. And then that way it gives us a path forward, and what we're going to be looking at for the next year. So I would say we move forward with the 6 recommendations, have a vote. And
before we call for a vote on that, and Jeremy, you too, I guess, is there any other like burning whatevers that we haven't talked about? I guess I should have asked that sooner. What's that? Or amendments that you want to make to what she just said? I want to make sure everyone feels good about the 6 because I'll have to take these tomorrow, Jeremy, Kayla and I to the Montana Board of Crime Control to say, these are our recommendations. Is there something I'm not saying let's change anything we just said, but is there something we missed? Is there anything we missed? And if not, we'll take a vote on these 6. Okay, so would anyone care to make a motion to adopt these recommendations that would go to the MBCC tomorrow?
I motion to adopt the 6 recommendations to take to the
Montana Board of Crime Control.
Montana Board of Crime Control.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Tina, seconded by Rachel. Thank you, guys. Is there any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Same sign. Okay, motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much, Jeremy, for all your work on it, and Kayla for all your work on that. That's a big deal. That's probably the biggest deal that we do, I think, is send those recommendations to the governor. And obviously, whatever they do with it is what they do with it. But at least we've done our part in trying to say this is important to this council, and hopefully the board tomorrow agrees, and then hopefully the governor takes a look at it. So thanks for all your work on that. Looks like Tammy's here. Thank you for waiting. What's that?
I'm here.
Thank you for waiting patiently for our financial report. Tammy.
I know it's not really my place, but I'm going to say this anyway. In reference to your data, when Kayla brings in Janice, Janice is going to give you guys information that's going to really help and move those ideas that you have along. Because, for example, she just finished closing out a grant that we got from the federal government. Now, I don't know if we can get that, through the federal government, but where we standardized the type of data that had to come into the data warehouse from all of the small jurisdictions across the entire state. And it's standard. And now it's coming in, and now they're getting good data, and they're able to clean it nicely. And so I think that
that'll help.
Our Joseph Data Warehouse people are going to give you some really good ideas.
Well, Kayla referenced Janice earlier, so that's probably what she was talking about. So yeah. Good.
Yeah. Not only do we, she works on the Joseph Data Warehouse, but her people are data geeks,
right?
And they know how to manage that and what kind of programming that can be sold across the board. So
cool. Good.
I think waiting, like Kayla said, for her to come in and give you some ideas is a great idea.
Good.
And part of the reason I say that is because when we look at our budget, we are funded primarily by the federal government. Juvenile justice doesn't get a whole lot from the federal or from the state government. So these ideas that you have, you're going to need to start working toward getting some state money. So with that in mind, your 22 Title II grant was awarded and spent out. So what we're waiting right now is we have a little over 21.5 left in the YJC budget, and a tiny bit in the Do the Right Thing budget, and some in compliance monitoring. So really, Do the Right Thing and compliance monitoring, you really don't have anything to decide there, but your YJC money from both 22, 23, and 24 totals $57,500.
All go to Hawaii.
That's a lot of money. And but we are funded on a reimbursed basis. So it's not like we send money back. If we don't spend it, we don't get it. We can't stockpile it. We can't say, well, we didn't use 21,000 from the 22 grant, so we can put this in a savings account. Once that grant closes on September 30th of 2026, whatever's remaining in that we haven't drawn down stays with the feds. So that is the highlight of my report, is that you have $57,500 to do something with. And our 2021 grant that closed, I'm sending in the final report in January, and we left money on the table. So I know Jeremy is coming up with some great ideas and some innovative ideas. He's already talked to his federal partners where you guys can use your YJC money to advance your needs.
Well, that's what I was gonna ask, if you could share with us, where we could use it, but it sounds like Jeremy's got some ideas, so.
Yeah, so that's not my purview.
Sure.
Right? Once Jeremy tells me we can spend it on this and this, what I do is I tally it up.
Put it in the, right,
And then I say, okay, make sure, Jeremy, that I have that in writing that we can spend it that way.
Yeah.
So that I watch the auditor when they come along. But Jeremy and I were talking this morning and he's got some great ideas for you. So that's basically it. We don't have our 2025 grant yet from the feds. So I don't know when that'll come out. But we do have this money, and the last of it for your YJC will need to be spent by 2028, September 30th, 2028. So
Amy, can you tell us how much expires? Like
Yes.
what expires first?
if you look at your report where it says 2022 Title II grant, you'll look at, there's administrative and YJC. If you look at that, you had $25,000. It shows for this report because that was a budget of 11,600. We've spent $3,400 of it. So right now you have to spend 21,500 by next September. Then when you look at the 23 grants, where you'll see again, you got 18,000 and you'll have to spend that by 2027. And that is the same on your square for your 2024. That was an 18,000 amount also. And that will be done at the end of 2028. So as you're looking at your squares, let's look at the 23. You'll see that, okay, at the top you have 600,734. That was what the grant awarded us. And then you'll see where it says closes 9/30/2027. That applies to the federal grant. And then the first four things are administrative type funding that can't go to pass through. And then beneath that, you'll see that where it says pass through awards, and then you'll see I put in the word subgrant 24J. That's our subgrant titles to there. Like it would say 24J-13- Boys and Girls Club of the Highlands. So all of those are 24J. They closed as of 5/15/2025, and you can look down and see what they've spent. You see that there's a little money left over there in the 23 grant, but it's going to close in 2027. So we might be able to use some of that money to fund the early part of a grant in 2025. So that's how you look at that. And then on your 2024 grant, that will close in the middle of May of 2026. So they're still in the process of spending down their awarded pass-through money. So really the squares above, the administrative squares, administration helps pay Jeremy's and my salary and whoever else is going to work for, these grants. But the YJC is your big amount that historically hasn't been used to its full advantage. We'd like to not leave anyone.
And we always talk about it, and then we haven't really come up with something. So I'm excited to hear what thoughts you have.
Jeremy has some
because we keep bringing up going to Hawaii, but it never get doing a board meeting in Hawaii, but it never gets approved. So we better come up with something else. And I suppose along those lines, if anyone has any ideas, Jeremy has thrown lots out. I'm sure we'll hear more from Kayla. But if you have ideas and wonder if it would work, reach out to Jeremy or Kayla and find out if that's a fit for those funds. I'm guessing, Landon and George, I'm guessing those funds, was that able to help pay? Yeah, so, they went to a conference that, we were able to pay for here. So that's open to anyone on this committee as long as it's approved and acceptable by these guys. So
can we use it to go to like, the community of practice conference? Okay.
I would bet most of the conferences that you guys go to, off the top of my head,
If it's
my
training
guess
related to this,
yeah, my guess is talk to Jeremy or Kayla and see if we can pay for it here out of this.
Yeah, and it's something that, as I'm still learning kind of the different things that we do and how things operate a little bit, but I would like to get to a point where maybe we have the council meet and do set some goals, talk about a work plan. Maybe it's incorporating some state planning with Title II. So do some of that internal planning as a council that this could be used for. And then we've just started the conversation about a potential training or a summit. So we can formalize some ideas and then bring that to the council. But one thing that I know Criselda and I have talked about is potentially looking at having a planning session with the council that some of this money could go toward, and then really setting some goals for ourselves, not only just for recommendations, but Title II planning or whatever it may be. So that would be something of interest to me in helping you guys be organized, plan, and have some goals set.
Well, and it's nice for you, Kayla, just coming on that, and Jeremy hasn't been here that long, that it's nice to have some money that you could work with some ideas that you have for the council, because we have not been really good about spending it. And to our credit for that in one way, but in another way, yeah, we don't want to leave money on the table. And now there's an opportunity for you guys to provide some opportunities for us, or some opportunities for the council, or whatever. Opportunity is probably not the right word, but to provide something for us, that there's money there to work with. So
we can't have a strategic planning meeting in Hawaii, but so don't set your expectations too high, but we can definitely work on something.
So yeah, it could be at a central location rather than here.
Sure.
Like, for example, the cost for this meeting is the sandwiches.
Right.
That's, a couple bucks.
Right.
That's not going to eat into this very thought.
Right.
So, if you guys can get away and have a day or two or three somewhere where we can all get together physically with Kayla and everybody and really go over things, that doesn't cost that much either. But
sure.
We've got the money.
Yeah.
We've got the money to do it.
A couple of years ago, we did that. Remember at Fairmont?
Yeah.
And I would have stayed, but it was right during Crow Fair. So it was,
yeah.
Not a good time for George.
I came for the board meeting and left, something like that,
Yeah.
Retreat where we can go through some more, we kind of rushed our recommendations, but flush them out a little better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not do that again.
Just have to find the right time.
Yeah, just not during Crow Fair.
And it doesn't have to be during the annual crime convention either. It can be, it can be whenever you guys want it to be. This is your money. This is not the board's money. This is not the pass-through money. This is not do the right thing or to come on. This is the council's money to do the best things that the council can do.
Are there any questions for Tammy on any of the financials?
I have a couple questions. And
Great.
I know that Jeremy's going to go over his ideas in a second, so we'll go through that. One question about that though is, what is their time frame again with just this amount of money for like planning a retreat type of thing?
You've got $21,500 available to you till next September 30th. You have to spend it before September 30th. Then you have an additional 18 for each October 1st through September 30th for the following 2 years. So 27 and 28.
Which could be spent sooner.
Yes, this,
So-
the entire 57.5 could be
Right.
spent now, but then you don't have anything for
Right.
when you want to do it.
Right.
So, but I don't see you guys anything initially that's gonna cost 57.5.
Right. Another question, Rachel?
Yeah, the other question is more about the pass-through funding. And so it might not be the best time now, but I think it'd be worth talking about the next meeting. But I know that the legislature this last session did pass a small increase to the Board of Budget and Crime Control's budget, 300,000 to specifically go to this like pass-through funds to increase that and get us to be able to get more money to programs.
Right. And we
And so I
cannot
just,
use that until next fiscal year.
okay,
It has been appropriated for fiscal year 27.
so to be a
So
part of
that-
next year's
That will be
financials.
something that you want to talk about in March and June
Perfect.
when you have your meetings.
We would like to have something that had that formalized and what we're gonna do with that released. So that funding can start in July.
Great. Okay. That was my question. Thanks so much.
Any other questions for Tammy? Okay, Tammy, thank you very much.
Well,
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Appreciate all your comments. Yeah. Okay. Jeremy, Youth, Justice Council, Youth
Right.
Youth Engagement.
So we started it off with this discussion at the kind of beginning when Judge Nicely was there. We were talking about how we could potentially use community service hours that the youth courts were basically their sentencing piece of that, how they could potentially use. And so I created a form, sent it over to Judge Nicely, and apparently she got back to me today. I did go look at it to see what go on, but her and I will meet next week to talk about, well, she's going to tell me what we need to do, and then I will do what I can to facilitate it.
Okay.
And so this part is pretty simple because we're just looking at potential ways to get more youth involvement because as it stands, we show that we have 3 youth on our board, but really we have 1, and we need to have a minimum of 3. And really, if we've had multiple adult members that would like to be part of the YJC, that have put in applications to the governor, and 2 just recently, and both would be fantastic. And of course, we have Marissa. If those numbers were actually added, we need to have a youth to be within our mandate.
And the one that we have outside of her father being a retired police chief and working here for the criminal investigator at the state is never been involved in the criminal justice system. And that's part
of the thing
it
is
too.
that you at some point were supposed to, or you can be a parent of.
Yeah, right.
Of a youth involved child that will allow you to be part of it. Right. So that's what we're looking at, is just trying to come up with some different ways to get some kids in here to have a voice.
Yeah. And
So that's it.
And I think that's good. And that might be court mandated, but
we'll take
would
it.
be a way to get them involved. So, okay, perfect. Thanks, Jeremy. Any questions for Jeremy on that? Okay. I don't see any public comment, Kim. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's no public comment.
Okay. Other council business, are you heading out, Tina?
I am.
Okay, thank you so much for being here. Drive safe. Title II update, Griselda. You're up.
Okay.
Well, sorry, real quick. Other council business. I don't think we have any, correct? No. Okay, Griselda, Title II update.
Sure, really quick. So the Title II federal application has not been released, and so therefore NBCC has not been able to apply for it. We also don't know how much money is going to be allocated to Title II. So what that means is that we are prepping and getting ready to release an opportunity, but we're not going to release anything until we have more information, which means that if we don't hear anything by July, we are going to send out a notice to all of our Title II subgrantees and say, here's what's happening at the federal level, and here is what NBCC is planning to do, which could mean a delay in the subgrantee funds here in the state. And so again, there's not much that we can do because we don't know what we don't know and what we have available for the state.
Okay, so there's probably no questions she can answer. Well, thanks, Griselda.
We do know what's in the pipeline. They did assure us that it's coming though. Just not
here yet, yeah. Okay, residential substance abuse treatment program, Jeremy?
Sure. So after doing a little research, we went in. This is definitely a possibility, but what has to happen is for us to be able to use RSAT for the kids, well, actually, and for the adults as well, is that there has to be a 6-month treatment for substance abuse to be able to use this as aftercare funds. Now, this can actually be set up to pay for residential, that 6-month program. And so, but basically based on where we're at right now, to be able to use it for aftercare, it has to be 6-month, that 6-month program. They have to complete that 6-month program to be able to use the aftercare money, the wraparound funds, or we have to fund, or we can fund that residential treatment program. So like, for instance, at Pine Hills, we could go in and we could actually pay for that programming. If we were going to look at something like that, we'd probably want to reach out to one of our regional detention centers or Pine Hills and see if they would be interested in being part of that and taking that on. So then if we were going to do that, suggestion would be that we would pick one of the programs, say Pine Hills, and then look to implement that residential treatment for substance abuse. That's really what we can do with that.
Okay. Any questions for Jeremy? Any comments? Okay, thank you, Jeremy. Kayla, travel expense voucher.
You guys have them. Thanks, Kim. It's just a reminder for us to
get it.
Get it. You got it.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Anybody have anything else?
Real quick.
Yes, Kim.
I already updated the minutes. I went in and looked at my draft. George's was in there already, and so was Tina's. Don't know what happened why they didn't get incorporated into minutes. I've already done that. Or give it to PDF and upload it, and you guys can look at it. And they'll be up there by today.
And they've been approved, so yeah.
I just want to let you know if I'll have them done by today.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Does anybody over there have anything before we go?
I have a quick question.
Yes, go ahead, Megan.
Well, I think it was during our last call where we talked about the investigation in Montana for sending many kids out of state. I was curious if anything has come from that or what has transpired since those meetings have occurred around the state, and if anyone knows anything. But I haven't heard. I was just curious.
Kayla, Jeremy?
I don't have anything there. I know that Mike talked about earlier that continues to be an issue because there is no place to put kids right now. And so the good news is as we all know, that at least in the juvenile justice system, our females are no longer getting sent out of state. They now are being housed at Pine Hills as opposed to where they were going to Idaho previously. But we're still in a situation where there are a lot of kids that are leaving the state, and partly is there is not a place to put them. Whether you're talking mental health, whether you're talking about depending on how violent or where the situation occurs with the kids, where they're being sent.
Megan, that's all we got.
Megan, was that
Do you want-
specifically on the DOJ investigation? Was that what your question was?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So can give a little more. It got DOJ got shut down. That section of DOJ got shut down during the shutdown process. So the investigation went on hold during that time. Once the shutdown opened, they have reopened it and are continuing to gather data, but don't have any findings or anything. But they paused the investigation during the shutdown.
That makes sense. Thanks for that.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Okay, any other questions before we adjourn
I just have
or comments? Kayla?
I just wanted to just thank you guys for the feedback today and the work on the recommendations, and also to share that I'm, as the new executive director, I'm doing board member one-on-one. So just meeting with board members, and after I get through with all the 18 board members, moving on to the Youth Justice Advisory Council. So I look forward to meeting with you guys one-on-one and just providing some feedback to me, and then also hearing about your service and what you do a little bit more. So just you'll be on the lookout for me reaching out to you and having that conversation, or meeting in person, or grabbing coffee. And the last thing is that I just wanted to thank Megan and Tina. I know she's left, but Megan, thank you for presenting at the conference. We really appreciate it. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Kayla, and thank you all you guys for being involved. And it is 2:06, so we will adjourn the meeting at 2:06. Safe travels to those of us traveling from here, traveling home from here. Thank you, guys.
Next meeting.
Next meeting is where are we at? December, January, March. What would it be, Jeremy? March 5th or
March
Well,
4th.
it's gonna be right in that. That's this year's calendar.
oh. So like whatever
So,
that Wednesday
so
is in
2026 is on March 4th, and the board meeting is scheduled for March 12th.
Oh, it's 11th.
No, March 4th. So the YJC is scheduled for March 4th. I'm looking at the calendar right now. That was approved in the September board meeting.
Tomorrow.
And the board meeting is scheduled for a week later, and that's been practice for the last few years that I know of. Just common practice for the March board meeting, that it's not the day after. It's a week after. So
Yeah, and sometimes that one goes somewhere else, right? Like Lewistown, I think they went one year, and
that would be the June one. And I don't think
Or-
this year they voted on any of the meetings being out of area, out of
Okay.
Helena. So, but that could happen.
But
I
I
don't
was-
know.
well, and I was just saying it for Kayla's sake, because I didn't know if she knew, but like, because I know some where I stay over for the next meeting, sometimes I don't, because I think last year it was in Lewistown, one of the things, so I went home and got on Zoom, but sometimes they do it elsewhere. I don't know why, but yeah.
Right.
And then, yeah, sometimes it's the week later, so. Which also then I'll join by Zoom, because I usually don't come back for that one, but I will if you want me to. All right, thank you, guys.
The March meeting won't be back for that.
Yeah.
So that would be good.
Yeah.
He's not the recording thing.
George, will you give that to him? Please, thanks. Thank you, guys.